What is going on, IB Nation? Welcome to another edition of Upon Further Review. And it is a Monday night, not a Sunday night, but that's okay. We just made you wait that much longer for the good stuff that we are about to bring you. Brian and I have gone over the film. We have delved deep into what was on Saturday night, and the good, the bad, the ugly. Let's just put it that way. And a lot to kind of dissect here, Brian. We're gonna talk offense. We're gonna talk defense. We're gonna kind of give our overall, and then of course we will go back and kind of go through the keys to the game, and we will revisit them on how things went. So, I hate going back and watching film where the team that you are associated with loses, but that is what good coaches do, because you got to figure out what went wrong and how you can fix it. And that is where we're at, Brian. And there were good things, obviously, in this film breakdown, but there were also some things that could have gone a different way and could have been better. And we're gonna talk about them.
Yeah, it was just one of those games, Vince, where you break it down. A lot of the stuff that you look at, you're like, well, you know what this game came down to? This is two really good football teams that went at each other on Saturday. And Notre Dame's guys made some plays at times. Ohio State's guys made some plays at times. This is not going to be a breakdown where, like, man, this entire game they were doing this thing poorly, and this is what cost them the game and all that. What it came down to it is in the games that mattered, in the moments that mattered, the Ohio State coaches and players didn't do what they needed to do. Because one thing I'm sick of is when people only look at players and say, oh, yeah, if DJ Brown does this, they win the game. I'm like, yeah, it's very true. But let's look at some of these coaching mistakes. But the opposite thing annoys the crap out of me as well. You know, when people point out DJ Brown, people say, you know, it's like, hey, look, he's got to make that play. Well, the coach has got to put these guys in better position. I don't know how much better position Al Golden could have put him in on that particular play. And there's other times like that too, where it's like, you got to step up and make a play. You got to make the right call. You got to step up and make a play. And I get really tired of this stuff of like, well, it's all the coaches. No, it's not. It's the players too. Oh, the players got to play better. Yeah, but they got to coach better too. Right. And that's really what Coach Freeman needs to be locked in on with his team is like, look, we got to do a better job coaching. And we got to do a better job playing. And, you know, we'll dive into a lot of that stuff and, you know, just kind of do a final rehash of the final two plays and get into that as well. But it was a frustrating game, Vince. Even more frustrating when I broke it down because there were just so many little missed opportunities that we'll kind of get into that in a game this close can be the difference between winning and losing.
And it was.
And that's what it came down to.
I mean, it was the difference between winning and losing, and it was just a confluence of events, I guess, you know, throughout the game. Okay, yes. And that's how every football game, let's be honest, it's how every close football game is. If this happened, then this happens. If this happens, then this happened. You can play the ifs and the buts game all you want, and I get that, but that's what coaches do. They go back, they look at the film, they figure out, okay, you know, where did I mess up as a coach?
Right.
And where did we not execute?
And Vince, that's what great teams need to do.
Correct.
I don't want to hear players if coach would have done this or coach. No. You need to look in the mirror and say, what could you have done? And I don't want to hear coaches saying, well, if this guy would have done this and this guy would have done that. No. What could you have done differently to help this football team win? And it's not just about play calls. You know, what could you have done differently during a week of practice? What could you have done differently in preparation? And that's what the great teams do. And we're going to talk more about this as the week goes on, because how they react to this game is going to tell us a lot about it. It's going to tell us everything we need to know about this football team.
I said that earlier about Duke. Right. I mean, it's this next game. You're going to find out a lot about who this team is.
We've had, 8 so far? 8. So 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. We've had 8 college football playoffs so far, right, Vince? This will be the 9th. Yep. The 14, 15, 16, 17, 21 champions all had a loss during the regular season. Urban Meyer won 2 national championships during his tenure, Vince, right? He won won 3 national championships.
Yeah, 2 at Florida, 1 at Ohio State.
2 at Florida, 06, 08, and 14. Right? And do you know how many of those national championship teams went undefeated?
1?
0.
0? Okay.
All lost game. They lost to an unranked Virginia Tech team at the beginning of 2014. They lost by 10 in 2006 on the road to Auburn in a game where they got thoroughly outplayed by Auburn. They lost at home to Ole Miss, good Ole Miss team, not an Ole Miss team that went 9-4, Houston Nutt Ole Miss team in 2008. And that's kind of how that season went. When you look at Nick Saban's teams, right? Nick Saban has won 7 national titles, right? If I'm correct, I think he's won 7 national titles. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right? He's had two of those teams went undefeated. The first one in 09, the first one at Bama, not the first one at LSU. The first one at Bama in 09, they went undefeated. And then the most recent one in 2020, the COVID year, they went undefeated. That's it. So the point is this to say that Notre Dame's going to win a national championship? No, it's not. The point is to show that even the best teams have those days where they just weren't the best team that day. But what did they all do? What did every single one of those teams do? And this is the point that I'm making here. They all responded. Nick Saban's first LSU football team that won a national championship lost at home to Florida 19-7. That was a Florida team coached by Ron Zook that went 8-5. Ed Zonbrecker was their offensive coordinator. The 2011 Alabama team lost at home in November 9-6 to LSU. The 2012 Alabama team that smashed Notre Dame lost at home to Johnny Manziel and Texas A&M. The 2015 Alabama team lost at home to Ole Miss in 2015. And the 2017 Bama team lost in the last game of the regular season by 12 to Auburn. So the point is not Notre Dame's going to win the title. The point is, A, the season's not over. And if you're ready to quit, that says more about you than it does Notre Dame. Right? But number 2, those teams in every instance that I just referred to, 14 Ohio State, 5 of Nick Saban's 7 national titles, all 3 of Urban Meyer's national championships, Clemson's first national championship under Dabo, all of them suffered a loss, but they all bounced back and said, not going to happen again.
Right.
And that's what Notre Dame needs to do. So there's a lot to learn from this game, because the thing is, we're going to point out a lot of things that didn't go right in this game, because that's what an upon further review does. It's taking a critical eye to what just happened. When they do well, we'll do that. But when you lost, we're going to take a critical eye.
Sure.
But what I would say, Vince, is Notre Dame did not play a great game. They did not play a lights out game execution wise and did everything they could. They just weren't good enough. There's a lot they can do better. And that's what the takeaway is going to be. Now it's, hey, players, now go out and do it. Right? It's okay to be criticized. Okay. If you lost the game at Notre Dame, it's okay to take criticism. So you can say, you know what? This is on me. I don't want to see former Notre Dame players jumping onto Twitter, getting mad at people saying DJ Brown should have caught this ball, because you know what winners do? They get in front and say, they're the ones saying, I should have caught that ball. And if DJ Brown is the young man that I think he is, he's not going to be getting pissed at people for saying that, because he should be saying to himself, yeah, I should have caught that ball. I could have made that play for my team. And then next time he gets in that situation, and you make that play. That's what you need to do.
And my guess is he is saying that.
Yeah, Jared Parker needs to be looking in the mirror and saying, why is this freaking Driscoll guy criticizing me? They say, you know what? Dang right. I should have made a better call on 4th down. I should have done a better job here. Same with Al Golden. And if those guys are doing that, this Notre Dame football team is going to bounce back well. If they're not, then they're going to stub their toe again. And that's a fact. And so we're going to point out those things tonight. But the fact is Vince, is the one thing that you learn on playing this film is, for all the issues that I had and that we'll have and talk about, this team played their butts off. And didn't play great from an execution standpoint at times, but they played their butts off. The moment was not too big for these kids, in my opinion. Right? Now they've just got to learn to finish, and that's what I wrote about last night, and that's what we're going to discuss. That's going to be a little bit thematic of what we do tonight, and then we'll do keys to success revisited, and if you guys leave any super chats, we'll do those as well. So I'm ready. I'm ready to get going, man.
All right. Well, let's jump into the offense, Brian. Let's start with the pass game. I mean, offensively, there was some things that were good, but there was some things
Yeah.
that were left on the table that could have made it better. How about
Yeah.
that? And I've seen a lot of criticism out there, why they bring Sam Hartman in if he's not going to take shots, all these different things. And I get it. I understand from a layman's point of view, when you're watching the game, you're not seeing the big plays happen and you're
Right.
wondering what the heck is going on. And from a stat standpoint, they threw the ball more against Ohio State last year than they did this year. Okay,
Right.
I get that. Where did you see what did you see from the past game? Let's just go there.
Well, I just laugh sometimes when I hear things.
I know.
So part of the reason that Notre Dame threw the ball more against them last year is because they couldn't run the ball on Ohio State last year.
At all. Yes, that's
right.
correct.
And so,
I know.
first of all,
right.
but did somebody actually say that they threw the ball last year more than this year? Because they didn't.
That I had heard some. I had seen that someplace.
Well, Tyler Buckner only threw 18 passes against Ohio State last year. Now they might have called more pass plays because of some scrambles and some sacks, but no, they didn't throw the ball more this year than they did last year. Anyway, let's dive into like more serious analysis.
Yes. No, I know. I just had
so when I look at the pass game, Vince, there were just a lot of little things. Number one, in regard to the deep ball, because I was a little frustrated with the deep ball stuff too, and I'll say two things. Number one is I did not think Notre Dame's pass game was overly aggressive. Number one, there were not a lot of deep balls being called. There were not a lot of deep plays being called. Part of that is because Ohio State it was a very heavy zone team in this game. And they did a lot of things to kind of mix up their looks. I thought Notre Dame did take some shots when they did get into some man situations. We saw a shot in the second half to Jaden Thomas in a man situation where Sam Hartman very clearly read man free and he took the shot. Jaden Thomas has got to do a better job on the route. I'm sorry. He just kind of went vertical and then did a little half, move and then just went around him. The guy just rode him to the sideline. That's weak effort. Right. Because here's the thing, quarterback's got to recognize cover one. The receiver's got to recognize cover one as well and realize I just have to win here. I don't have to get certain depth because of, eating up the safety. The middle of the field is closed. There's one guy high. There's nobody in my line of sight. There's nobody else can help here. I've got to win off the line. And I thought that was indicative. That play, for example, was indicative of just the Notre Dame receivers not doing a good enough job with just really having a sense of urgency coming off the line, whether it be speed when they were off coverage or trying to win at the line. Now, I thought one of the best, Rico Flores had a decent win at the line, but he's got to do a better job using his hands to get off there. But that was a missed opportunity that we'll talk about. Sam Hartman's got to throw that ball further out and give Rico a chance. And they ended up not calling PI on that. And my response to you in the press box was, yeah, they probably should have. But when the ball's that underthrown, they're just not going to call that a lot of times. You throw the ball out there and make him run through Rico a little bit more or be more, aggressive trying to break that pass up. So that was a missed opportunity. Jaden's got to win at the line. I thought Rico did a decent job winning. The receivers do too much of going like this on inside and just exposing their ribs and their chest to defensive backs that they've got to do a better job of. They got to be more tight with their hands, be more physical with their hands, and stop doing this over the top stuff. And the thing that frustrates me is it'd be one thing if okay, we just saw it against Ohio State, but you and I were talking about this after the NC State game as well, Vince, where they were doing these moves and they're trying to get their hands real high. And then I would do this with my receivers. We would do this. And if they would go like this, I'm just giving them a forearm right in the chest.
Exactly.
Boom. Why are you giving me your ribs? Stop. Be tight. Punch through. Get your hands down. They just don't have enough hand violence right now. And that's something that Coach Stuckey's going to have to work on, is they've got to be a lot more physical and violent with their hands. And it's one thing for Tobias Merriweather to not be great at that because he's still kind of skinny and not strong yet. Jaden Thomas at 220 pounds has no excuse to be not being more violent with his hands and physical with his hands. And that's just something that Jaden does a lot of nice things, but he's got to do a lot better job there. Sam had that missed opportunity with the football that he's got to get out there. There just wasn't a lot of urgency coming off the line when they were playing off. There were times when a receiver was clearly running a go route, but he was just sort of take the top off kind of guy, get the corner out of there, because they would come off the line with no urgency. And I've said this before, nothing drives me more nuts than that, because what if Sam decides, hey, I got to cover one here. Let me take that shot, you know, and just, there was a lot of that kind of stuff. The receivers didn't play poorly. They didn't play well either. I thought the downfield run blocking also was another issue. It's very inconsistent from the receivers.
And that's a new problem. Like, that was a new problem for me.
They've been doing a pretty good job of that.
I thought overall their downfield blocking has been pretty good, and it was lacking.
Agree. So I thought that was a mistake, Vince, or that was something that concerned me, Vince. So schematically there's some stuff, but honestly, there was also things they did schematically that worked, that gave you opportunities. I mean, because again, against Ohio State, sometimes you've just got to go make a play. Quarterback's just got to get the ball downfield. I mean, look, Kyle McCord made 2 throws down the field in this game where Notre Dame guy got beat and recovered, and so they just interfered. And I felt with a couple better balls. The other really good release was Tobias Merriweather ran a really nice, kind of like a stutter go move, and there's corner knew he was beat, which is why he immediately just grabbed his jersey. And so you'd see him pulling Tobias back, and then got a 15-yard penalty on one of their touchdown drives. So Tobias didn't make that play, but that good release,
he made
resulted in that corner doing against Tobias what J.D. Bertrand and DJ Brown did on the other side of the ball when they were smoked, which is, this guy's about to smoke me. I got no safety help. I'm grabbing him. Maybe the refs won't see it, know, and so I thought that was a good release, but there just needs to be more of that, Vince. And then some other things in the pass game too. I thought there was a couple missed opportunities. We talked about this with some short throws, and there was one particular missed opportunity that we're going to draw up, which is which I just was a little frustrated by, to be honest with you. It was on the second touchdown drive, and I'll explain why this matters, because some people say, well, they still scored, so why does it matter? But Notre Dame went to they ran. This is the play that Mitchell Evans caught a 25-yard reception. And let me just get the particular down and distance here. So this was a 3rd and 10, and it was play 5 of the 3rd offensive series, second half. So for those of you who like to go back and watch these plays. So basically Notre Dame is running all verts here, Vince, on 3rd and 10. And so you see sort of a 2 high kind of look here. Could also just be 1 high, because the way they're lined up here with this guy, they could all kind of come down, and this guy could stay in the middle of the field. But what happens is this guy goes here, this guy starts to drop here, and he's kind of eyeing Tyree. And I felt like I would have loved to have seen Sam Hartman. As soon as he sees this guy going back, I would have loved to have seen Sam Hartman kind of eye him and then come back and thrown a rope over the middle of the Tyree. Because what happened, Vince, on that particular play, let's go here. And so it looks like it's not going to take me to that next clip. So here we go. So let me take this to the next clip.
Of course not.
This is kind of what happened post-snap on that particular play. Now, I was very clear on this particular play. Let me just make sure it's zooming to fit. So I was very clear to make sure that I didn't show what it looked like after Sam Hartman had really released the ball. Because sometimes you'll see a guy coming open and they're like, whoa, why didn't you throw that ball? And you're like, well, go back and look at where the DB was when the quarterback starts to throw the ball. He was right there, and then he took off towards where the quarterback was throwing the ball. That's why the guy came open. But this is when Sam's about to throw the ball, and you see this middle of the field open. Now, this linebacker here, you'd think, well, he's kind of there, but he had kind of settled in, Vince. He was not still pedaling. He was not going to open up and get underneath that. Sam needs to throw that ball right out here. This guy has his back turned to the football. This guy is behind Tyree. I would like to see that ball kind of thrown right out here on a rope. Now, again, they ended up getting a 25-yard completion because Sam Hartman threw a gorgeous ball to Mitchell Evans up the seam. But this is just one of those ones where when you're playing a team like Ohio State and something like this comes open and Chris Tyree is there, you want to take that chance. You say, well, why does it matter? They still scored. Well, they took several more minutes off the clock to go down and score. After that play, they ran, defensive holding, ran, touchdown pass. They run several minutes off the clock. Well, after Ohio State goes down and scores to make it 17-14, wouldn't you like another 90 seconds to 2 minutes on the clock?
Right.
in that situation.
Just
You know,
maybe.
so those are those things where you look at and just say that there's just some of those little bit of missed opportunities. So when you talk about the pass game, Vince, you know, there were some things that I would have liked to see Notre Dame done differently. Some opportunities that hit, but there was also at times, you know, credit to Ohio State. There was a couple times Notre Dame tried to run some 2x2 pass concepts and some of their high-low pass concepts, and Ohio State would walk up, show blitz, and then just bail right underneath stuff. So a couple coaching things, Vince, that I would have liked to have seen done a little bit differently is number one, well, three things. Number one, I would have liked to have seen more RPOs in the run game. I thought as active as they were getting their safeties, some of those glance routes and stuff behind, I really thought this was the game we were going to see that, because we know that they run it. We have yet to see them actually do it in the game. I thought this was the game they were going to do that. They called very few RPOs in this game. There's some, but very few. And especially in the second half when they were really coming downhill, I thought there were some opportunities to kind of pull and throw behind the safeties. And we just didn't see that as much in this game, Vince. And so, you know, that's obviously one thing. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more 3x1 pass stuff. I thought that is some areas where they could have gotten Ohio State into some problems, either throwing to the 3x1 or bringing the 3x1 back. Could have created some more opportunities. There was way too much kind of 2x2-ish type of stuff.
Balanced.
Yeah, where it allowed Ohio State to better in their zone sort of get underneath that. And I don't know if maybe Notre Dame wasn't as prepared for Ohio State to do as much zone as they did because they were getting underneath stuff. But I would have liked to seen more sort of flood concepts, because those are geared towards attacking zone defenses.
Right. Because you have to, and the reason that is because you, in a zone concept, you're making a guy make a decision. It's very similar to an RPO. Whatever decision he makes, you make him wrong. That's kind of the basis for a flood concept. Generally, you've got three guys in a route concept. You've got two defenders, and one guy is going to have to choose which one he takes. Therefore, he's wrong, and you throw it to the open guy. I just want to clarify for some people that may not understand what that looks like. But I agree with you. That is like a flood concept is designed to beat zone. It's not designed to beat man-to-man. It's designed to beat zone. Because if you're in man-to-man, you know, there's no decision to be made. Guys are trailing or they're right there. And so they're not man beaters. Those are zone beaters. And I think that's an important thing to point out.
You can beat man with it if you run really good routes, you have good players and that kind of thing. But
fair enough.
The point you're making, no, I'm building on your point.
Okay.
The point you're making is it requires you to like win.
Yes.
You know, a one-on-one, where when you're running that against zone, it's designed to attack certain spots. So it's more of a you know, vertical read. And I thought the way that Notre Dame was able to kind of leak their backs out a lot, I thought in this game, Vince, and I felt like that would have been a great opportunity for, in my opinion, for Notre Dame to kind of get their backs a little bit more involved in the run game with some of those concepts. And they did some of it, right? I mean, they did some of it. It's not like they never did it. I just would have liked to have seen a little bit more of it. And there was one tunnel screen that went good that I'm trying to find it now.
It was to Great House.
Yeah, but when was it? I'm trying to find it. I thought it was in the first half, because they ran one tunnel early and it got batted down. I thought they read that pretty well on the first.
Was it the 28-yard?
Yeah, to start the second drive, start the second series. So that's what it was.
It was to start the last touchdown series, right? Is that the 28?
No, it was the no, that was a seam route. That was actually a really well-designed play. They faked tunnel to the right and came backside.
Gotcha.
That was one of my favorite calls of the game, Vince, because they had run tunnel. Yep. Ohio State had sniffed it out a couple times. They had hit it once in that game, Vince.
That's right. It was the first play of the second drive. I got it right here.
Right.
It was it was a 12-yard gain. It was a 12-yard gain.
Yeah, and I'm trying to find that particular play, and you said it was, and so that was one where they had motioned to 3x1, and that just created a little bit more spacing, and it was to the field. And then when you look at the early tunnel that Notre Dame ran, and that was on the second play of the game, or the third offensive play of the game, that one was a little bit more. That was a boundary or a field play, but it was out of a 2x1, and it was a condensed look. And so, that was one where you felt like, hey, you see that, and then that should have been a tell, like, hey, listen, when we're in these situations, like when we're creating space, we're able to do a lot more, in my opinion. So when you actually look at it, it was a little bit longer developing type of screen as opposed to the quick hitter. And I just felt like that was something that would have told me, hey, look, when we space them out a little bit, we're creating more lanes to throw into out of that stuff. And I just didn't think they went back to that enough, in my opinion, Vince. And like I said, the RPOs would have been nice as well. But and then personnel wise, I thought Rico Flores did a really nice job in the game. Jaden Greathouse did a really nice job in the game. The problem that I saw is for too often is you had Jaden Greathouse, Rico Flores, and Jaden Thomas on the field together too much. And just personnel-wise alone, that removes a lot of your deep threat. And that was another thing that I thought was a little problematic.
Rico got a lot of playing time in this game.
And he played well. I mean, it's not
absolutely.
even like none of those guys played well. I thought the freshmen were the two best receivers they had in this game, as far as making plays and blocking and things like that. It just was more of I would have liked to seen a little bit more of a mix and match with, Rico on the field, Tobias, and Jaden on the and then, and maybe Rico and Tyree on the field together, and then Jaden, So I thought those were all things that I would like to see a little bit differently, Vince, in the pass game. But some of it too was, Ohio State's DBs played well. Their corners especially played well. I thought that would be the other thing is I wish they would have done more to try to attack their safeties. But this is where I'll give Jim Knowles a lot of credit. He didn't put their safeties in a lot of man situations. They were playing like off. They were playing over the top. They weren't going to allow Notre Dame to expose their safeties with one-on-ones down the field a whole lot.
And they knew that's where their potential weakness was in this defense.
Yeah. And then it was like, hey, we don't think Notre Dame can protect their quarterback long enough to get some of those shots. Now, Notre Dame's pass pro, I thought for the most part was good.
Agreed.
There was a couple times they had soft pressures. Like there was one time where I'm trying to remember the play, but Sam could have got a throw off. There was a throw to get off schematically down the field, but he couldn't pull the trigger because the right side of the line had been pushed back a little bit too much, and he couldn't step into the throw. So there's a couple of those, but for the most part, I thought the pass pro was solid. It wasn't great. Like just because you don't give up a lot of hits and sacks doesn't mean your pass pro is necessarily great. If you're not giving the quarterback a real comfortable pocket. But I thought as the game went on, the pass pro got better and better and better, in my opinion. Like some of the stuff that we saw where it wasn't great was more early, but I thought they settled in. I thought they played it. The pass pro was a lot better. And they didn't do a whole lot of max protection in this game either. There was one.
They did a couple.
They had one where out of 11 personnel where they had the tight end stay in and the running back stay in. There was a play where I'm trying to think of what the situation was, but they ran out an early pass play at an empty, and it was a third down play, and I think it was the third drive where they ended up trying to attempt second drive where they attempted a field goal.
Yeah,
Ohio State brought a pressure, and I thought the one of the linemen should have stepped to a different guy, and might have taken a little bit longer, but that was just good scouting by Ohio State. They knew the weakness in the protection, and Notre Dame ran some slower developing routes, and they were able to make plays. So there were some times there were some times in this game, Vince, where I was like, Jared Parker on that particular play had Ohio State's number. And then there was other times where I was like, that was a great call by Ohio State, and their players executed it well. So it was a really fun battle back and forth.
Yeah.
There were some missed opportunities in the game. You saw an Ohio State team there's a lot more discipline than what we saw last year in the past game, where they weren't turning guys loose a ton. And it just required Notre Dame to be more efficient. I saw somebody in the chat, why can't the receivers get open? And I'm like, I can show you 7 or 8 plays where the Notre Dame receivers are running wide open. Jaden Greathouse's seam route, wide open. Chris Tyree on the cross route, early second play of the game, wide open. There were other plays where guys are getting open by a couple steps. You just got to get the ball out, or you got to have time to get the ball out. Or other times where like the read just never took him there. This read was there and he threw the ball and it never got there. So, those are different aspects of it that I want to see, Vince, from this football team moving forward. Is I do think they've got to find more ways to be aggressive throwing the football against teams that are playing deeper.
And teams that are playing good
Yeah.
defense in the secondary. I mean, right.
Like we didn't see, there was a couple double post routes that I thought, man, if Sam would have had another second, that underneath post is coming open, you can fit that sucker over the middle. But I didn't see any stuff with like a backside post with like over, where you maybe bring like they were doing the high-low stuff, Vince, but it's very static. It was like vertical, come in, crossers. Like I wanted to see more stuff that was a little bit more movement, run that backside post and then bring like an over route and a cross where it's just a little bit more depth on that as opposed to the static in, just a quick in, high, low, which was allowing Ohio State to kind of play underneath those routes. Is do more where it's like a crosser from number 2 out of a 3x1, but then have number 2 do more of an over concept. Number 3 do more of that. Where they were doing that a couple times, they did a route like that. It was number 2, and there was no underneath threat to keep them from getting up underneath it. So there's just a couple things like that where I would like to see Notre Dame just adjust a little bit more to put more, because that's sort of a backside flood type of thing. Right. So just some of that stuff I thought, looking back, could have been an effective adjustment or things. And those are things we know Notre Dame has in their arsenal. They just weren't able to get to it.
Yeah. Agreed.
Run game wise, Vince.
Yeah. Run game.
Yeah. Let's talk a couple missed opportunities overall. Then we'll talk the one big missed opportunity. And then we'll talk about the final drive. So go ahead and kick things off, Vince.
Yeah. So, run game for Notre Dame, I think, if you're basing it off of last year and what they were not able to do in the run game against Ohio State, I thought the run game was pretty darn effective.
Yeah.
I mean, they, estimate average 5 yards a carry. The other two guys average over 7 yards a carry. I mean, there was
no 50-yard run to pad the stats.
Correct.
The longest run was like 22,
I want to say. Yeah. It was just grinded out, good running of the football. I thought, we talked about the interior of the line. We talked about the right side of the line going in, a lot of the stuff, what is this offensive line going to give Notre Dame? I thought they gave Ohio State everything that they could handle from a run game standpoint. I do. I think that they ran the ball when they wanted / needed to. They got stuffed at times, but you know what? They're playing a really good defense too. You know what I mean? So, but I thought overall, man, definitely cannot say that they didn't work hard. You know what I mean? Those guys were coming the entire time. There was some missed assignments and there was some things that maybe even scheme wise I didn't like very much. But overall, I thought the offensive line played well. Ryan.
So you got to give the resident Ohio State fan a little bit of a chuckle here, trying to spin the play of the run defense, saying they held the nation's leading rusher to 70 yards. And bro, he carried the ball 14 times.
Right.
And the Notre Dame running backs as a group ran for 176 yards in the game.
Yeah. And
so, I mean, like Notre Dame ran the ball pretty darn well against Ohio State. And they had it's 11, 25, 32, 34 carries, right? So now Ohio State did some nice things in the run game, but Notre Dame averaged over 5 yards a carry and their backs rushed for 176 yards. Well, I thought was kind of appropriate when you consider that they only rushed for 76 against Ohio State last year.
Right.
And in this game, they ran for 176. Yeah. So, to me, I thought the run game was on point. The run game was there. And matter of fact, the problem at the end of the game was that they didn't rely enough on the run game.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to. They didn't rely enough on the run game. And that's where you wanted to see Notre Dame be, so
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, when your top 3 backs, Vince, and if you look at it and you look at your top 3 backs, so Audric had 70, Jeremiah had 57, Jadarian Price had 22. That's 149 from your top 2. on 25 carries. They averaged 6 yards a carry, those top three. The number got dragged down a little bit by Jabron Payne because he had a 1-yard touchdown run. He was kind of their short yardage guy. They brought him in on 3rd and 3, and he churns out 3 yards. So he was very efficient, even though his yards per carry was down. And and I thought that was something that was really important in this game as well. And I thought they played very well. And so if you look at the top 3 running backs, because to answer his question, who had more yards per carry, Notre Dame's top 3 backs went for 5.96 yards per carry. Ohio State's running backs as a whole, like their top 3 running backs, went for, 104 plus 13 plus 0 equals 117 divided by 21. That's 5.57 yards per carry. So I don't know how they do math down in Georgia, but here in Indiana, 5.96 is higher than 5.57. So if you wanted to ask me who had the higher yards per carry, believe 5.96 is higher than 5.57, I believe. Correct?
Accurate.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Last time I checked.
That's what I thought. Let's talk about that run game. And
there were some missed opportunities in the run game, too.
Yeah, there were. I liked what they had. Okay, dude, you've been a pretty good guy here. You've been a pretty good guy here for the last couple of years. Don't ruin it by being a prick tonight. Okay? Don't do that. So you look at I'm not talking to you, Vince, by the way.
I know exactly who you're talking to.
So when you look at the run game, Vince, the plan was clear. Ohio State was geared towards stopping the downhill runs. I thought Notre Dame did a really nice job being prepared for that immediately and having stuff they built into the game plan. The 21 personnel, they ran 32 personnel at one point in time. They ran a full house backfield, which got me a little fired up a couple times.
Yes,
they did a nice job getting the backs out of the backfield in other instances, which I thought was good. And so they did some things that way, but they did a really nice job mixing up the hammer with the speed. Mm-hmm. So this was the first time we really saw a lot of the thunder and lightning type of thing.
Yes, it was a very concerted effort to do that as well. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So when you look at it, I thought that helped the run game get going. Right? That's something I liked, Vince, is I thought that it allowed the run game to get going, and it's why they averaged 6 yards a carry, with their longest run being 22 yards and their next longest run being 18. Mm-hmm. So it was chunks. It was 6. It was 7. It was those type of plays.
Right.
And the top 3 backs only had -1 negative yard in the game. None of the actually, that was the only negative yard. None of the running backs had negative. So even when they weren't getting a lot of push, they were avoiding the negatives. And that's something that helped them kind of somewhat stay on track to not get into a whole lot of 3rd and longs. Well, there were some 3rd and longs, but it didn't allow them to get too much into the 3rd and longs. And so I thought that was something that I like to see too, Vince, from the run game. Here's a couple things. There's 3 things that I just they're going to haunt me a little bit from this game, run game wise. Number 1, the 4th and 1 play call. I'm going to come back to it again. I didn't like the first 4th and 1 because I didn't mind the pass, but it was very telegraphed. If you go back and watch it, Vince, the offensive line's pass setting, like they're catching immediately. So it's very obvious on Ohio State's linebackers and DBs read it perfectly. They read the offensive line kind of stand up, and they sat and dropped, which I thought was great read. And they were all over the Notre Dame play action pass. I wanted to see a little bit more of a downhill, really hard run action and then try to throw off of it. I thought that play was a little telegraphed a little bit more. And then Sam's just got to do a little bit better job of just getting that ball out, towards the sticks. I still kind of thought he got it. My whole thing with that particular call, Vince, is whatever they called on the field
is what should have stuck with. Because we talked about that in IB Nation Sports Talk because – they should have never reviewed it in the first place. And then even when they did review it, it should have been whatever the call on the field should have stood, because there was no evidence that he didn't make it based on the angles that they were showing. I mean, bottom line, there was no evidence that he did not get it. Like clear, reviewable evidence that he did not get it. That's my biggest issue with that. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but it was called on the field as a first down. And when they reviewed it, there was nothing on there that said first down. So
Right.
that was my biggest issue with that review.
And if they would have called him short on the field,
then you leave it that way.
There's nothing. It's kind of like it takes me back to the Clemson game 2018 when Chase Claypool recovered that fumble near the sideline and they ruled it a recovery.
Right.
There was nothing in the evidence that should have told you reverse, just like it would have been not enough there if they would have ruled it out of bounds.
Right.
They should have said there's not enough. It's not clear evidence to overturn a call. I've seen and this isn't just this game. There's way too many replay booths that are willing to overturn a call when it's not clear.
Right.
And if it's not,
exactly.
I've always felt this. If you've got to look at a play for more than 20 seconds, it's not clear. You want to shorten games, you have 20 seconds to look at a call. And if it's not within 20 seconds, if it's not obvious to you what the call is, then
is what the call is.
Right. And so to me, whatever that was called, but if it's a better play call, then you don't have to put it in the ref's hands, in my opinion. The second 4th and 1 was the one that I really just did not like. The first one was just like, okay, maybe you should have done a little different action there. You know, it is what it is. The second one, going for a quarterback sneak on 4th and 1. And it's sort of that look for a place to find a hole as opposed to just getting behind your boys and just root hogging up in there. It wasn't that. And that's why I said, if you want to run a quarterback sneak, then you get in there, let Sam get low
and just push
have
and
the
go.
Running back come in there, push him, all that kind of stuff. But like that particular one, it's Sam's got to make the play. And that's not what you brought Sam Hartman here to do, in my opinion. If it was Deshaun Kaiser, 6'5", 6'4", 240 pounds, okay, cool, a little different deal. It's Brandon Wimbush, 6'1", 220, a little different deal. Malik Zaire, a little different deal. Dane Christ, 6'5", 235, good at. Okay, cool. But that's not what you brought Sam Hartman here to do. And you've got a 230-pound workhorse behind you. And that leads me to my final thing, Vince, is in two of the biggest moments of the game, you went away from your workhorse.
Yeah.
And that's what it boils down to. But there was an even bigger missed opportunity on the play before the 4th and 1. This is why I always say it's never just that one play. If you just convert the 4th and 1, maybe go down and score, and then who knows first of all, we don't know how the game would have played out if Notre Dame would have scored on the first drive of the third quarter. Maybe Ohio State does something different.
Right.
Who knows? We don't know. But on the 3rd and 2, they ran power. But I got to go. It was either counter or power. And Ohio State crashed it hard. And Vince, you pointed out to me before the show, JT did he was very aggressive. When he saw power counter, he crashed it hard. And on that play, Rocco did a really nice job of seeing the crash and working around it. And then Mitchell Evans bounced around it, and the safety comes inside of him. And if Audric reads that properly, he bounces it, Vince, and there's nobody out there.
The entire defense was inside
nobody
that
out
defensive
there.
End. Yeah.
So go back and watch the 3rd and 2. And then if you want to know what that play should have looked like, go to the 4th play of the next series, Vince. So second half, it was the 4th play. It's a 2nd and 2, 4th play the next series. They ran the exact same play.
Just to the other side.
Squeezed inside, and Jadarian Price read it and bounced it for 15 yards. And so it was like, man, Audric just needed to bet. Now, I understood what he was trying to do. He's thinking 3rd and 2. I'm just trying to hammer it up in there and get the first down. I understand that, but you got to read that sucker out, baby, and you got to bounce that thing. And if he bounces that, dude,
it's a big one.
It's a big play.
Yeah.
And then now we're not, and this is what I always say, I don't care if it's the final play of the game. Football's never about one play. It's about, even the illegal pick against Florida State that wasn't an illegal pick or should have been an illegal pick, or they should have called holding on Jalen Ramsey, whatever the case may be. The fact of the matter is there's a lot of things before that point in the game that led you to where that shouldn't have mattered, right? And that's kind of how I felt about it. And this was a perfect example because that 4th and 1 should have never happened. if Audric and I wouldn't crush Audric for it if I'm the coach, because I understand what he's trying to do. But I'm like, look, even in that situation, I understand he actually showed good situational awareness, thinking I got to get vertical and get the first down.
Sure.
But it's just one of those ones where I just want to see him be just a little bit more patient. And
it's funny. I was watching that play just now as you were talking, and you want to talk about nobody being there. So everybody had wrapped inside, just like you said, inside the defensive end. And then the only guy that was outside was the corner, and they were in man coverage. And so the corner had turned his back to the line of scrimmage, following the receiver. So he was in chase mode on the wide receiver. And so if Audric happens to bounce that outside, man, it's 25 yards before he even gets touched. And the only reason the corner knows to turn around is because of the roar of the crowd. Like, that would be the only way that he would turn around at that point. So you want to talk about a missed opportunity, and one that would have erased the 4th and 1 even being a question. Like, that's it. I mean, that was something else right there.
I'm going to pull that play up, Vince, and actually show people what I'm talking about here. So,
okay, cool.
Yeah, so just I'll send this view, and then I'll show you the tight view as well. But if you look at this view right here, it'll show what Vince is talking about with the bounce. So you see that Mitchell is pulling, and you see that guy's his entire disposition is he's coming inside of Mitchell. Yes. That's the read that Audric needs to see. That's what he needs to say to say, hey, look, this guy's coming inside. I've got to bounce it. And if he does, then, he's got to play. Now, it's not a simple read. And if you show it from the tight, you'll see that it wasn't a super clean read, Vince, but it was still the read he should have made, in my opinion. Sure. And I'll pull the tight view up here in a second to show what I'm talking about, because again, it's about being fair. That's why I'm saying I'm not going to crush Audric for this, because I understand why he did what he did. But to me, it's just one of those things where it's just another example of, if you could have just bounced that sucker and just maybe showed a little bit more patience, but then, trust the scheme and all that type of stuff, maybe something else happens here. So as you can see here, like I said, it's not a super clean read, but my whole point is, even if he bounces it and Lathan Ransom goes outside, you've got the inside completely sealed off. Even if you'd stretch that, then you plant vertically, you're picking up the first down. Right.
Yep.
But when you look at it, like, this may make you think that, oh, well, look, it's still outside shoulder, right? So the color still has some. If you read what Lathan Ransom was doing, he was coming in on the play. He wasn't coming out. Like if Lathan Ransom was working from the hash to that point, Vince, then you'd say, hey, he made the right call. But he wasn't. He was coming downhill, and he was playing vertical. Right. And I just felt Audric should have just pressed that one more step, and then he could have seen that bounce. But Jadarian did that a couple plays later. So, but again, it was a bang play. I'm not crushing Audric for it. It's just one of those little missed opportunities where, in a game like this against a team like this, when you read that one right, it can have a big impact in the game. And then the final thing is, like, now I want to say something too. I wrote in an article yesterday that I thought Sam Hartman went the wrong way on that handoff, because his body language looked like that of a guy who was trying to hand off. And I know that they were running that other stuff earlier in the game where they were kind of faking one way and going the other. I went back and looked at it. He didn't go the wrong way. He rushed. He just rushed it because he saw that guy crashing. But that was one where that was a new wrinkle they put in, where they'd kind of fake one way and then come back on the power, and then the second back would go lead block. And Devin Ford blocked pretty well on that particular play, on that concept, by the way. But he sees the defensive end crashing, and I just think he rushed. He rushed it. Had he just kind of had a little bit greater sense of what the scheme was, he would have kept on that. He would have rode that a little bit more and give the handoff, because they had a puller coming to kick that DN out. That DN didn't blow up the play. He got blocked out because they had a backside puller. I just think Sam saw free runner and just, I don't want to say panicked, because I don't think he panicked. I just think he just rushed it and tried to make a play. The second mistake Sam made is when you do that, man. This is quarterback 101. When there's a miss handoff, you follow the back. You just tuck the ball, follow the back, and get what you can
follow
get.
and go. Don't turn your back.
Right. Because then that guy crashing's got to get between. He's got to go through Jeremiah Love to you to get to the football. So I thought it was a missed opportunity in that particular moment. I also didn't love the call. And the reason I didn't love the call because, I just don't want the ball. I want the ball in my dude's hands. And I know that Jeremiah and Jadarian, I just found out today, listening to Coach Freeman's Jadarian Price.
Oh, well, there you go.
Apologies to Jadarian the last 2 years from calling him Jadarian. But Jadarian Price, I mean, those two kids, Vince, ran the ball 11 times for 79 yards, over 7 yards a carry. They helped get you to that moment to where Audric only had 14 carries and you could have rode him. That's my thing. So the two biggest moments of the game, you don't have your best play. You don't have the ball in your best player's hands. And if I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose because they beat my O-line and they stopped Audric. That's how I'm going to lose, And so that was something that was a little bit, if I'm going to look back and be that hindsight 2020 type of coach, if I was in Jared Parker's shoes, I would have.
It's tough. I mean, it is, we were talking about this earlier as well. Sean was arguing for just run the ball, obviously, you know what I mean? Which I get. I totally understand that, and my argument was, okay, you run the ball. Let's just say you get stuffed. You still got to kick the ball, but they use that last timeout. They still get the ball back with the exact same amount of time left, but with no timeout, clearly in a more advantageous position. My other argument was, if they hit that screen, Jared Parker's a friggin' genius. They don't hit that screen, he gets knocked down. Great play by Ohio State. They never should have hired him. It's amazing how things can come down to just one play or one situation or whatever. Because if he does hit that screen, man, he's running for a really, really long time. But I also understand why you give the ball to 7 and you say, let's see where we can go at that point.
I don't even mind. I'm kind of purposely doing that, Vince, because I keep wanting to interrupt you. And so it's like good, I'm leaving myself muted so you can keep talking.
I just see you going and I was like, oh,
no, I know. It's helping protect the conversation because I'm like really fired up tonight.
I get it.
But I don't even mind throwing on that drive. I'm not one of those people that's like just run the clock out because that's not aggressive to me. Like I want to go for the win. It's just one of those things where slip screen, breaking down Ohio State. It's like this guy knows he knows I'm doing a show right now. But when you look at that situation, Vince, slip screen is not a great play against that team. It's definitely not a great play against that end.
Yeah.
They had already kind of, Jack Sawyer had already kind of sniffed out a perimeter play. Like if I'm going to throw a screen there, I'm doing a tunnel, which had worked for you more. I'd have done more of a swing screen to get the ball in space because they are crashing off the edge in that particular instance. Or I'd have just dropped the ball back and then Sam say, hey, Sam, if there's nobody there, take the check down, which they had done. And so it's not even that they should have just, grinded it out. It's just that I just didn't necessarily love the particular play that they went with, and I felt like having Audric on the field more would have opened up some different type of things running, throwing wise. Like, if they would have come back and rode Audric and then thrown like an RPO pass and then it gets batted down, I said, you know what? I like the aggressiveness there. I'm just not in the whole, just run him. I would have been fine with that. Once you got the second first down, like where I would have had a problem is if they came out at their own 11 and just ran your punt from your own end zone. Nope, that's not where. So I love the first play call. They went empty on the first play. I was like, that's ballsy.
That was the word I was just going to use.
There was nothing timid or scared about what Jared Parker did in that last drive. Nothing. It was just not the particularly right calls on the third play. Loved the first play call. They ran verts on the first play, Vince. They went verts on the first play, basically.
Yeah.
And then you come out and next play and Audric runs. And you if you go back and watch the second half of that game, Notre Dame was really starting to lean on Ohio State in the second half. I mean, with Jeremiah Love and with those guys, like they were really starting to lean on him. And I just want to get downhill. Nothing cute, nothing fancy, nothing of this reverse stuff, which had worked early in the game when it was Ohio State wasn't. Because you got to think about this. Ohio State's in a we got to make a stop mode.
Right.
And so I'm okay with a, hey, yeah, we could run the ball 4 times here, 3 times here, and punt with maybe a minute left. But we're trying to win this game because I don't want their offense to get the ball back with where they score either wins it or ties it. What I want to do is I want to win the game. And so use that aggressiveness against them. I just didn't like that particular call. 2 sets of calls, the first down call or the second down call. I'm going with Audric on first down. I'm coming right back on that very next play and running Audric. And it was just one of those things where one of the complaints I've had about Coach Parker, I think it's done some awesome things, is there's just their philosophy is too much of a changing from play to play to play to play to play their personnel. And that's just one of those times where it's like, bro, ride the horse.
Yeah.
You know, ride him because he's leaning on these cats in the second half. And you've really done a nice job of getting that kind of push against Ohio State in the second half. And I just wish they would have stuck with it a little bit. And then the calls they could have made, I just would have done something a little bit different.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
yeah.
Vince.
I was just going to say the run that they finally did call with the 2 back and all of that. It was just too slow developing for the situation, in my opinion. I agree with Ryan. We talked about it in the post-game show. It's just too slow developing for that situation. Now, they had success with that exact same play, that exact same formation earlier on in the game, but it's a different defense, a different mentality from Ohio State at that moment. And I get it. Like, they were getting some chunk yards out of that personnel and out of those plays. Chunk yards, man. And they were doing a really good job. And I honestly like that personnel grouping and how they were going about it and using the speed guys and all of that. I like it.
It's great.
Just
to get
not
there.
just not in that situation because of what was going on. I mean, that's where, you hammer Audric at that point. I agree with everything that everybody's saying, but just for a little bit more of a sophisticated reason, I guess. You know what I mean? It's
and Notre Dame in that moment, Vince, they had run for 123 yards in the half.
Yeah.
And if you really look at that up until that play, they went -5 on that play and then +3 on the 3rd and 15. So you take 2 carries off and add 2 yards because they went, 2 carries for -2 is what they went on those last 2 plays without Audric. So they had basically had 125 yards on 24 carries prior to that moment in the second half. And it's just one of those things where it's like, ride your dude, right? Yep. Or if you're going to run that, like, just do something a little bit more direct. Like Jeremiah Love was not necessarily a bad call there.
Right.
It's just maybe it would have been buck sweep might have been where you can maybe get outside of that hard crash or something like that. So, I mean, again, it's looking back, it's hindsight 2020, but that's what you do as a coach when you have a game is you look back and say, if I'm in that situation again, what am I going to? If they're in that situation this week against Duke, you want to know that they looked back and said, what should we have done? What could we have done differently? And that's what good coaches do. I would hope that they're doing that. I would hope that Coach Parker has spent a lot of time saying, in the next time we're in that situation, maybe this is something we could think about. Maybe this is something we could go to in that particular instance. And I think that would have worked pretty well. And it's just, again, it was just one of those moments where, Vince, it's like you needed to make a play.
Right.
And you didn't make it for whatever reason. But I also think it masked what I thought was otherwise a very good series. And here's one thing that's been said that's frustrated me a little bit is the whole, and no one's complained about Notre Dame. No one's complained about, Jared Parker in the first 4 games, right? And we said we're going to learn a lot about Jared Parker in this game. And we learned some things that were very good, some things that you hope that next time he does differently. But what I don't like is the whole, well, if they had Andy Ludwig thing, because Vince, I'm a very pro Andy Ludwig guy. But have you guys watched Utah's offense this year?
You took the words right out of my mouth, Brian, because
somebody was saying backup quarterback and all that, but like they just went for 14 points and like 219 yards and 3.4 yards per play against UCLA.
I think they're averaging a little over 20 points a game.
Right. Again, backup quarterback, sure, but Notre Dame averaged over 30 points a game last year with their backup quarterback.
Right.
Named Drew Pine. Right. So let's critique the job he did, see how he would adjust, because we're going to learn if he is the guy or if people, because like I'm not even saying people that think that he's not the guy are wrong. I'm saying we've seen a lot of good evidence. Saturday was some good, some I want to see better. There's also a lot of good things they did in that game. And I thought the second half play calling from Notre Dame was excellent up until that moment. It really was, Vince, because if you look at what Notre Dame did to Ohio State in that second half, I mean, first drive of the game, first drive of the half, they get down into Ohio State territory, and it was the fourth down. So it's like, dude, I love the drive until you get to fourth down, and that's when they started kind of leaning on them. Second drive of the second half goes for a touchdown. Third drive of the second half goes for a 96-yard touchdown.
Right.
And then your next drive is the one you lost it on. So, my whole point is there was a lot of good, like people, I want to see good second half adjustments. They did that. They mixed up the run game even better in the second half. They did some different things in the pass game. Hey, they're jumping our tunnel hard. When we show action right, they're flying hard right. So you know what they did? They pumped tunnel, and Sam comes backside. He's got two guys running backside routes. So let me I got the concept of what they ran on that play drawn up, Vince, and I want to pull that up because I really liked the concept. Give me just 1 second to find this here real quick. Did I not write it down? Well, whippersnappers. I want to find that play, Vince, because I loved the concept that they did there, where they faked the play where they got the ball to Jaden Greathouse. You know what I'm talking about?
Okay.
I need to find that particular play. It was the last touchdown drive, correct? When they ran it, was that in the fourth quarter?
So the last touchdown drive,
did it start in the fourth quarter?
I believe.
Yeah, it started in the. It was the. Yeah, it's the very beginning of the fourth quarter.
They went to Jaden on the first two plays, both.
Yeah, they ran them on a jet sweep.
Yep.
So and then second play. So Notre Dame, I got it pulled up now. Notre Dame runs up. They go doubles. And again, what did I say? I like the stuff where they spread Ohio State out in the pass game. This is an example. So they've got the ball to the field, and they've got a 2-by-2 alignment. And they ran the running back to the left. Now, if you've scouted Notre Dame up this year, Vince, when they release the back on a swing to turn it into a three guy side, and they have the tunnel coming backside, they've run that a lot this year. Tunnel one side, swing screen the other side. And so what Notre Dame did is they showed that exact look, tunnel right, swing left. It's, by the way, Vince, it's play 49.
I found it just now.
They pumped the swing, and then Sam immediately comes backside, and he's got a post stop by Tobias and a seam by Jaden Greathouse, and it's wide open.
Yep.
And it goes for 28 yards. Like, that's a great adjustment. That's a great, hey, they're flying here to the tunnel because we've had a lot of success this year running tunnel screens, and we've run a lot of tunnel screens. We've run this swing. And you and I have talked about this. They're setting something up with this tunnel stuff. We talked about this after the NC State game.
They came back to this tunnel, man. Holy cow.
Yes, and that's a great play call. Yeah. And so I think what can happen is that you lose a lot of that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter about those play calls. What matters is, did you get it right on the 4th and 1?
Right.
Did you get it right on the final drive? And that's where Coach Parker's going to have to prove something.
Sure.
Is in that moment, you're going to need to put your guys in a little better position to put that sucker away. And what I think he did, Vince, is I think he stuck with what had got him there from the standpoint of the overall flow of the game. But my big picture is what got you there is Audric and the run game. And in that moment, it's like, hey, let's just line up and go do this. Right? Let's go do this.
Yep. You just take their soul. I mean, that's the identity that Marcus Freeman wants for this team. He does. I mean, you get him in a dark room sometime and you're like, what is your ideal identity of this team? It's we can run the ball with 4 minutes to go and just take your soul and win the game. You know what I mean? Like that's the identity he wants.
Right.
Go take
that
it.
Was the
go get it.
The other thing about that play is it was smart that they had Jeremiah Love being that guy. Because Jeremiah Love's the guy that defenses are starting to worry about. Yep. And he was the guy that went in that motion on that play. And you looked at Ohio State, yes, they flowed hard to the tunnel, but their linebackers were staring right at number 12 on that swing screen, and they had no concept of Jaden Greathouse running behind him. So there just was a lot of stuff like that, Vince, that I really liked in this game that you did see that I thought they did well. It just, end of the day, they just weren't able to do it in those final couple big moments where the game was really on the line. And they're just going to have to fix that. And then, look, there's changes being made, right? I mean, Notre Dame's changed holders.
Yeah.
Like something's got to give, right? So let's try another holder. And if the other holder doesn't work and Spencer Schrader doesn't start kicking better with the new holder, then it's time to make a move at kicker, right? I mean, so they're willing to make some of those moves. Now they just got to go get them done. So that's the offensive one, Vince. Do you want to dive into the defense here?
Hey, stick around here. Stick around because we are going to jump into defense. But before we do, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bell, all those fun things, reviews, all of that. And, share with your family and friends. That's what we want. We want to get it out there, get IB out there. All right. Let's talk some defense, Brian, because upon further review is not just about the offense. It's also about the defense. And there were definitely some things that we saw defensively that were good. I mean, hey, at the end of the day, going into that last drive, the defense had given up 10 points, right? I mean, that's good.
And that included a fourth down stop at the 1.
Sure.
So Ohio State had kind of done to the Notre Dame defense what the Notre Dame offense did to the Ohio State defense. They moved the ball. They just couldn't finish off some drives, right? So, yes. But there's some stuff to definitely talk about here, Vince. And we'll focus in on a few areas because a lot of what we talked about on Saturday is kind of true from this, but there's definitely some stuff that we want to get into, Vince. Where do you want to start with this?
Well, let's start with linebacker play. That's the first thing that you and I were talking about when we decided to get together on this thing. So let's talk linebackers. How they did, did we see progression from the first 4 weeks into week 5 or not?
I think we saw regression.
Yeah, I do too.
And here's what I mean by that, Vince. Actually, early on, I thought JD Bertrand played pretty well early on. He made a couple really nice run stunts where he had gotten to the ball. He was playing very physically. But then later, as the game kind of wore on, I thought he was just a little bit more undisciplined and out of control in the things he was doing. And there were some misfits, I felt, by him, but I thought he played hard. I thought he made a huge mistake. So, I've heard that a lot of people, I haven't seen this because I haven't paid attention, but I've heard a lot of people on socials and other things are blaming Maris for the long run. I don't. I thought Maris is one of the few people that did what he's supposed to do on that play. It's one of the better run crashes he had all game. That was on JD and Xavier Watts. Both have to make better plays there. And I would argue Cam Hart needs to be a little bit better there too. But that's about about JD and about Xavier Watts. Going back and looking at that play, JD had no idea where the ball was. He was just kind of crashing.
Yeah.
And that's stuff we hadn't seen him do a ton this year that he did last year. That was a little bit disappointing. And then Marist, Vince, that particular play actually was one of Marist's better plays. I thought overall Marist was he was okay in pass rushing early and a couple early pressures. Actually, first half, I thought Marist I actually thought the blitz stuff that they did in the first half was pretty decent, Vince. I thought they had Kyle McCord really uncomfortable in the pocket in that game. And I thought JD had some good early pressures. Maris had a couple good early pressures. And then after that, it just kind of went away. And Ohio State went in at halftime, made some adjustments, and those things just weren't hitting home a whole lot more anymore in the second half, and the pressures weren't there as much. But the run fits, to me, they did a good job overall shutting down Ohio State's run. Ohio State only ran for what was like 120 something yards, Vince, like 126. Let me pull it, 126 yards. 61 of those came on one carry.
Right.
But there were also, if you break down the film, about 4 or 5 other runs where if he can make one guy miss, there's a crease there.
Sure.
Because there was they'd got this edge sealed. They slanted away from some stretch plays. I thought Notre Dame early on had a couple stretch runs where, you're lucky their offensive line's not very good because you were out leveraged in those instances. And there was one early stretch play that if Javonte Jean-Baptiste doesn't just throw the tackle off and squeeze down on it, it might have gone for another 15.
Right.
So there were some good individual plays in there as well. I thought Notre Dame did a better job of adjusting to that as the game went on and was a little better about that. But there was a couple times where they needed some good individual play to shut that run down, on top of the fact that Ohio State's offensive line is just not that good. And I thought the interior of Notre Dame's defensive line, especially Howard Cross, but Riley Mills at times as well, and Gabriel Rubio at times, they were just pushing the Ohio State interior back, and there was no cutback lane. So if you look at when the stretch worked because it got off tackle and went inside of the edge. They had no cutback lanes really in their zone and their stretch plays. And a lot of what they did that worked in the run game was the stretch and then the counters, the counter bounce. That's where Ohio State had all their success. And you and I thought that's where it was going to be because that's who Ryan Day is.
Right.
He just doesn't have that physical downhill running game that they used to have when Urban was there. And so Notre Dame also took that away. They did a pretty good job there. And that's what was disappointing about the play of the linebackers, because I thought the interior guys did a pretty good job of keeping guys on them. And it should allow the linebackers to be more disruptive in the run game.
Right.
I thought JD was physical or like aggressive, but he just had some bad fits. Marist, for whatever reason, Vince, just was not nearly as aggressive as he needed to be.
He was hesitant.
He was letting the second level blocks get to him. They were often engaging him 4 or 5 yards down the field. He looked uncertain of what he was supposed to do at times in the run game, Vince.
I'll tell you what, and my overall feeling on how Marist specifically played, if you didn't tell me that, like if you just like lined up a bunch of different game films, right? And you didn't tell me that the game film from Saturday night wasn't from 2023 based on the first 4 games, I'd have told you that this is game film from 2022 with the way that he was playing. Just a step slow, a step hesitant, like running, allowing that second level block to get to him, not coming downhill as fast as he has in the first 4 games, because we've seen a good Marist the first 4 games of this season. And this one, he appeared to regress a little bit for me. It was very reminiscent for me of 2022 Marist. And that was the biggest issue for me.
I didn't think he was bad in the second half, Vince, or in this game. I didn't think he was as bad as he was last year. He wasn't lost. He wasn't confused. He wasn't out of position. He just wasn't aggressive enough, in my opinion. And that was just like, there was one, like the 4th and 1 pass play that they ran. Marist initially stepped vertically, saw the back release, and got under him where maybe Kyle McCord could get a pass off over top, but he would have had to lob that sucker over top of Marist, but he couldn't because Riley Mills read it, blew the running back up, and forced Kyle McCord to run. And so, I thought he did some good things. Some of the stuff that got him in trouble was more related to the play calling, but he just wasn't aggressive enough. And that was kind of the thing, because like even last year, like Marist would be aggressive. He just would not aggressively hit the wrong hole. I just thought he looked at times just unsure of what he was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And again, the linebackers made some plays. DJ had a couple really good early run stops. Jalen Snead had the great pass breakup on the 4th and 1. That was an incredibly athletic play, because that tight end had gotten underneath the third level coverage in the end zone. And I'm looking at it now, and Jalen just made a great play. Riley blew it up, got him out there. He was open if let me rephrase this. The tight end was open if Jalen Sneed wasn't in the window. I mean, Jalen was in the window.
Right.
And then he made a great job of getting behind it to break the pass up, but he was in the window. So he did a good job on that particular play. It just was one of those things, Vince, where when you break it down, the linebacker play wasn't great. But honestly, that's not what cost them this game. Maris' play against the run, JD's play against the run. What cost them this game was not making plays in the pass game. I mean, I'm watching that fourth down play right now, the 3rd and 1 play right before the 4th and 1. And I mean, just simply put, Notre Dame just beat Ohio State's butt up front. I mean, that's just what it comes down to, Vince. They were the more physical group. And I thought Javonte Jean-Baptiste had, I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen this kid play this well. He's been playing well all year for Notre Dame, but you could tell he had something to prove on Saturday.
Yeah, it was a bit of a coming out party for him as a guy that the defense counts on. You know what I mean? Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, that play he had on the 3rd and 1 blowing up the edge was really impressive. It really was.
I hope he continues it the rest of the year, and it's not just because it was Ohio State. You know what I mean?
I think Javonte, and we've talked about him in past shows. Like he's been a really pleasant surprise this year. He really has. But getting Gabriel Rubio back helped the run game as well.
I thought he played pretty darn well.
Yeah, he was physical.
For not being in the lineup for the last few weeks. What are you going to get from him from a physicality standpoint? I thought he brought his lunch pail, man.
He did. And, I'm watching this play here where he just comes off, and the right guard, Matthew Jones, tries to come down on him. This is on the 3rd and 1 play on the 4th down stop, and he just rocks Matthew Jones back into the hole. And then Javonte crashes off the edge and blows it up. But he just drove him back. I mean, it was a really impressive play. And then who was that Nana, the guy that blew up the tackle? I think it was Nana. No, it was Javonte. Javonte just blew up Joshua Fryer on the backside. And then, of course, Howard Cross was great on the backside of that play as well. Howard Cross was just a beast on Saturday.
Yeah.
He was the one guy that I thought got some good consistent pass rush. He was good against the run, play with good leverage. I thought Riley Mills was good in the game. Just everything they're. Let's get into the pass game, Vince.
Yes.
Right. And also, this team needs to tackle better. Right. That's still a problem. They need to tackle better, but it wasn't atrocious. I mean, it wasn't terrible. There was just some key missed tackles, but they tackled okay. Ohio State's going to make you miss sometimes. It's just going to happen.
They're a good team. They're a good team.
Yeah, they are. To me, when I broke it down, Vince, look, I thought the D-line played their butts off in the run game. I thought they were the reason the run game couldn't get going more than anything.
Agreed.
They were very good in this game for the most part. They kind of got blitzed out of a couple plays sometimes, and that's where Ohio State was able to find some of their success in the run game. Vince was just more of a play call type of situation to me more than anything else. And, so that's something obviously you've got to figure out and get fixed. I'm watching the 61-yard touchdown run again now. And it's just one of those things where, they slant it in and Maris blows up the puller and JD just kind of hunts out the guard instead of hunting out the football. And then Xavier's got to take a better play. But it's like, I'm not putting that on the line. It's just, that's who Ohio State is. You can't allow yourself to get out leverage like that against Ohio State. Right. But other than that, I thought the D-line was really, really good. Really good.
Yeah.
And people have said that they didn't get pressure on the quarterback. I actually don't agree with that. Because I think what I said before the game, and you and I have had this debate plenty of times, Vince, is pressure to me isn't always about sacks.
Getting home, yeah.
And that's where I would critique it. They didn't get home enough. They didn't get enough hits on the quarterback. They didn't get enough batted balls. They didn't get enough sacks, right, if you're going to evaluate that. But Kyle McCord wasn't comfortable in this football game. And a lot of that was the pressure. And it was, it was Riley Mills blowing up the running back on the 4th and 1 and then getting him out of the pocket. That was a pressure. I mean, that forced him out of the pocket, and that allowed Jalen Steed to make that play. If he can sit in the pocket and Riley Mills doesn't come, then he can maybe try and float the ball over top to the running back on the slide route on the 4th down. There's a lot of times that he didn't, but when they didn't get pressures, when they would blitz 3 or only bring 3 or 4, and just the way that they're trying, like the way there's no counter moves. It's like you pick a lane and you go into it. It's like they're so afraid of losing leverage now that they've overcorrected. And, we saw very little from Jordan Patelho in the pass rush. I thought the interior is where the pressure came from. And that's the part of the defensive line that I actually thought did a pretty good job in this game was up the middle. I mean, if you go look at the Pro Football Focus stats between Howard Cross and Riley Mills, they had 11 pressures in this game. That's
just the two of them.
Just the two of them.
Yeah.
They had 11 pressures in this game. Gabriel Rubio had 3. Javonte Jean-Baptiste had 3. Josh Burnham had 1 and only 3 pass rushes. And that's another thing is Jordan Patelho has not played well enough to warrant Josh Burnham only playing
getting. Yeah.
I'm sorry. And they didn't play Junior Tuihalamaka at all. And that one actually I don't have a problem with in this game. This isn't a junior game. This wasn't a junior game in my opinion. This was a game though where Josh Burnham should have played more. Josh Burnham played 4 snaps. According to Pro Football Focus, he had a pressure and a run stop in this game. So, I just don't know that Jordan Patelho has done anything to warrant him playing, what was it, 60 – where's he at? Jordan Patelho, 56 snaps, and the backup Viper got 4. I mean, because the thing to me is, even if Jordan was playing well, I don't want 56 snaps under his belt on the final drive of the game. I want him a little bit more fresh. And that was one of those things where I understood why the starters had an upped rep volume. Howard Cross should not have come off the field very much. Riley Mills shouldn't have come off the field very much. I just didn't understand why Jason Onye didn't play a snap. And Gabriel Rubin only played 12. Javonte Jean-Baptiste had 64 reps. Nana had 5. Jordan Patel had 56 reps. Josh Burnham had 4. And Jordan Patel should have had 58 reps, but he was the guy not on the field on the last 2 plays of the game. The Viper wasn't on the field. And so my whole thing is, it goes back to what we've said before. It's not that Riley Mills isn't good or Howard Cross isn't good or Javonte Jean-Baptiste didn't play his butt off. But give me 10 less reps on their legs on that last drive, and maybe a couple of those pass rushes get home. And that's my point. That's why I would have liked to see a little bit more of that. And that's decided not to do that. And the legs looked a little heavy at times. But even then, Vince, right before the big play to set up the final touchdown, they had just gotten a sack.
Yep.
Basically. They did.
The
very next play, and this is what's frustrating, is you've got this pressure package, and then you get in these third down situations, and you just don't do it. First third down of the game, Vince, they dropped 7. Actually, I think they might have dropped 8 now that I think about it. And guess what happens? Nobody covers the tight end. Nobody. It's well, what's the point of doing that if nobody's going to cover the tight end? And so that's where I say in that particular part of the game plan, they were not prepared to play well. Yeah, they dropped 8. But you've got Maris sitting 3 yards down the field, Jordan Patelho dropping, and he has neither of them have any concept of the tight end. Neither of them. Now, what should have happened is Jordan should have squeezed inside, I think, or Maris should have got up underneath them. But either way, Vince, it's nobody knew who's supposed to cover the tight. There was way too much of that. We're in these drop 7, drop 8 situations. But here's the deal. You had a top 5 pass defense, a top 5 defense coming into this game because you were aggressive. And in money situations, they went away from that.
Right.
Whereas I have criticisms of what Jared Parker did, but in those moments on that last drive, Jared Parker said, we're going to keep doing what we've been doing in this game. I think they should have kind of doubled down on Audric. In this situation, they went away from who they've been all year. And guess what? They weren't good enough to do that because they were trying to make stops in key situations, doing what they're not good at. And to me, Vince, that was my biggest beef with what the coaching staff did in this game defensively. And that's why Ohio State on the final drive of the game converted a 3rd and 10, a 4th and 7, and a
3rd and 8, 19.
19. Yeah. And it's like, it's like the the first 3rd and 10, it's like you're bringing 5. It doesn't get home. Kyle McCord makes a great ball. Tip cap to the kid. You didn't get home and he threw a great ball. I mean, not all of them were bad coaching. Sometimes it's now what I didn't like is the technique of where they allowed the inside seam release. But that's what they always do, and I don't like it. It's partly why they give up the middle of the field so much. Every team they've played so far in 5 games, Vince, when they need to play, they go to the seams.
Yep.
Everyone.
Yep. You're talking about on that 3rd and 19?
Yes.
They just let the seam go.
I'm talking about the first 3rd and 10.
Oh, okay.
I'm kind of going through that whole drive.
Okay.
And it's just one of those things where, like, that's where you're just not scouting yourself very well.
Yeah.
And so, people are going to go inside and attack that zone because they've done it every single game. And it's because you are protecting the outside release. I don't understand why they're doing that. So as I think it was Marvin Harrison, I believe made that play. I'm looking at it now. Was it a Mecca? It was a Mecca. So he presses Thomas Harper outside, and Thomas Harper widens with him. That tells me that they are telling Thomas Harper, don't let him get an outside release. In that situation where you're bringing 5, or actually, how many did they bring? They brought 5 or 6. Let me look at it here real quick. They brought 5. You're missing one underneath defender over the middle. A linebacker that normally would drop in a hook curl zone, Vince, is now blitzing. So now why are you then giving away that inside with your leverage? And they do that all the time. That's why whenever teams beat them, they beat them over the middle. And that's frustrating. And then they did the same thing on the 4th and 7. Sometimes you can say, Thomas Harper got beat. But my whole point is actually, I don't know, was that particular play Clarence Lewis or was that Thomas Harper? That was Clarence. No, that was Thomas Harper. But again, where did they go? They were right over the middle of the field on the crossing route. And Notre Dame wasn't aggressive. They allowed a free release, and Julian Fleming just beat him across the ball. And I mean, it's just that kind of stuff the whole game, man. We're just whenever they needed to play, they knew right where to go. And it was frustrating. It was very frustrating. I'm looking at and then
frustrating.
Let's get into the last one, Vince, the 3rd and 19.
Yep, I'm looking at that one right now. This one was frustrating because almost exactly what you said, allowing the seam to run unmolested down the field. And Thomas Harper, for example, immediately on the snap of the ball, goes for the outside. He heads for the outside receiver.
Because it's zone.
Right. Because they're basically bracketing the outside receiver, essentially, is what ends up happening. But the number 2 receiver, because it's a 3 on one side, 2 on the other. So 3 to the field, 2 to the boundary, right? And it's a 5 verts. Like, that's what it is. That's what this is. It's 5 verts. And they cover 4 of them perfectly. And the number 2 guy on the left-hand side, who's the second of 3, he just runs straight up the field, and Thomas Harper goes away, and the safety doesn't come down underneath.
Right.
And it's an easy throw, frankly.
Right. Now, when we talk about Thomas Harper, we're not saying Thomas Harper did something wrong.
No, he did exactly what he was told to do.
Right. Just so we're clear, so people
Yes.
understand that. Vince isn't saying Thomas Harper screws up and does this. No, we're saying, like, we're critiquing the call.
Right.
And so you give that up because then JD has to reroute number 2. So what has to happen there is DJ Brown has to squeeze on that route. There's no reason for DJ Brown to be pedaling into the end zone there.
No, he needs to come down.
If you get verts, you've got to jump number 2.
Yes.
It's just you
have to think that's what he was supposed to do on this play.
Yeah.
He's supposed to jump number 2 because Harper is going away and he's abandoning number 2.
Right.
So you're just letting number 2 run down the field.
Right. Because it doesn't look like in cover 3, they might have that corner squeeze, but you can't have the corner squeeze in that situation because otherwise there's a whole throw to hit over there.
Right.
You've got to have the safety sitting on that goal line. And because the first down, they've got to get to the 3-yard line to get a first down.
Correct.
And the forget the final before you even get to that part, Vince, you're conceding 10 to 15 yards on that play.
100%.
When you shouldn't. And this is what I loved about, if you go back to the 2020 Clemson game, when Notre Dame played Clemson in overtime. You remember that, Vince, where Notre Dame had just scored in the second overtime. I'm actually going to pull that play up, those two plays up. Notre Dame had scored. They both scored in the first overtime. They both got touchdowns. You remember?
Yep.
And then they get into the second overtime, and Notre Dame gets back-to-back sacks. Because the thing is now they kind of played off a little bit in that situation, Vince, if you go back and look at it, but they still brought pressure, and they were able to get to the quarterback with that pressure. And so you got him in that third and long situation, and they heated him up, and that's the difference is that's Clark Lee said, hey, we're gonna go to what we're gonna get to kind of get him into that situation. So it was on first down, I think they got a sack on first down, right? I'm actually going back and looking at it now. So they got a sack on first down, brought 5. You got your linebacker comes free, or was that a safety? Yeah, that was you brought a second level pressure. Who was that? I'm trying to look and see who that was. Oh, it's Jeremiah Usu-Koromoa. You blitz him, he gets a sack. Then you get into 2nd and 19, and they run a quick stunt. And what Notre Dame did on that particular play was they took away the quick stuff from Clemson, which allowed the pressure to get there. And then, of course, on third and 24, they played off. But if you go back and look at that play, the Notre Dame safety sat at the sticks and jumped what was in front of them. And then, of course, on 4th down, they put the game away. So it just is one of those things where we've seen this kind of situation before. And if you're going to play off, that's fine, play off. But there needs to be some aggressiveness to that off, and there was no aggressiveness. It was a very soft way of playing it. And what it boils down to is in clutch situations, they made calls that this team just does not do very often. You went to your C game, your C stuff, your C calls when the game was on the line. And that's playing not to lose in that situation. Because here's the thing, Vince, I don't want to give Ohio State 12 yards to get into a 4th and 7 at, what would it be? They were at the 22 at the 10-yard line. I don't want to let Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka and Cade Stover get 10 yards away from the end zone with the game on the line. I want them staying out near the 20. So if they're going to beat me, you better throw a dime into the end zone, getting somebody over their outside shoulder. And look, if Marvin Harrison, and here's the thing where you didn't play to your strengths in that moment because you've got your 2 best players on defense playing off coverage. I am taking that away right now. So they did the whole game. And I'm going to play aggressive. I'm going to take that stuff away. And I'm going to say, if Kyle McCord's going to beat me, he's going to have to freaking throw a rope outside, a wide fade, dropped on a dime over top of somebody. He's going to have to hit that one-on-one outside. They're going to have to make a tackle. They're going to have to do something like that to get this ball off. I'm not letting those receivers get free releases down the field. And then your safety plays off and plays soft and doesn't come up. And when I mean soft, I'm referring to the coverage, like not being aggressive. I'm not saying he is soft. It's just the term means something different when you're using it from an analytical standpoint. And so I hated everything about that call, Vince. I hated everything about that call. It's not who you are. You said it
before the play even happened. You're sitting right next to me. You're like, oh, they're playing really soft here. He's like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I said they're playing too soft. That's exactly. I said they're playing too soft.
Yep.
So, and then of course it goes through, and that's exactly what happened because that's not who you are.
Right.
It's not who you are. And let's, you know what, Vince, honestly, I don't want to do revisiting the keys tonight. I just don't want to do it. We've already talked an hour and a half on this stuff.
Right.
But one of the defensive keys was make Ohio State earn their yards. Make them earn it. Right. And Kyle McCord earned the first 3rd and 10 completion. That was a great read. They were bringing pressure. O-line picked it up. Ohio State earned that 3rd and 10 conversion. I don't think they earned the 4th and 7, and they definitely didn't earn the 3rd and 19. Meaning, not that, I mean, look, Kyle's still got to make
they
the
still had to
play,
execute.
and
Yeah,
then
still had to
Mecca still has to
execute.
execute. This is not meant at all to take anything away from Ohio State. What I mean by make them earn it is don't make it such an easy release, an easy
Make them
throw,
have to
an
make
easy
a
read.
play, like a
That's what
legit play.
exactly.
Yeah.
A drop it over the shoulder,
Right.
drop it over the top, something like that. And that's to me what they didn't do. And that's, where, again, I'm critical of Jared Parker on the last drive, but I can understand, because you even said it. If they hit that screen, that sucker's gone and the ball game's basically over.
Correct.
Right?
You can go to a knee at that
I
point.
didn't like Jared Parker's calls, but he was playing to win. They just didn't execute. And I didn't love the calls. Right. In that instance, they were playing not to get beat on that 3rd 19. And I hated it.
And I
hate it. And he's been doing this since last year. So this is on him and Coach Freeman, because Coach Freeman still allows him to do this in these situations. In 3rd 19, you're going to beat. You know what a great example is, Vince? You remember Super Bowl 32? You ever watch the NFL films of Super Bowl 32, Broncos against the Packers?
Oh, okay.
And the Broncos had just scored, and Greg Robinson, the late Greg Robinson, goes up to Mike Shanahan and goes, "What do you want me to do?" Mike Shanahan goes, "Keep doing what you've been doing. You want me to blitz a lot?" And Mike Shanahan goes, "Whatever you've been doing." This is literally says, "Whatever you've been doing, keep doing it."
Right.
And so they heated Brett Favre up. And so in that 4th down play, they brought a heavy blitz. And Brett Favre has to throw off his back shoulder. John Mobley undercuts the route. Because, again, if I can't step into this is a Hall of Fame. And at the time, Brett Favre was the best quarterback in the NFL. He had won, couple MVPs. They were the defending champs. And they basically said, look, if they're going to beat us, Brett Favre's going to have to make a Hall of Fame play. And he couldn't. And so the Broncos won. In this situation, they should have done the same thing to Kyle McCord.
Yeah.
Because what do we say before the game? If Kyle McCord can step into throws, he's going to make them.
And that's exactly what happened on that 3rd and 19, man. Like, the way that they played it, there may as well have been 20 less people on the field. It was just Kyle McCord and Emeka Egbuka, because he got the snap. He saw that Thomas Harper bailed, and it was just pitch and catch. That's all it was. It was pitch and catch. There was no defender he had to go over. There was no, it was just pitch and catch. And he's a highly touted quarterback. He can make that throw all day. But you rush 3, you got no pressure, and you let the guy run straight down the field up the seam. And live, it was like, man, Kyle McCord just made a great play. Looking back on it, yes, with the bullets flying in the moment, and I get that, and you tip your cap to a degree. But as I'm looking at the all 22, and I'm like, man, that's an easy throw. Like, there's a lot of quarterbacks that can make that throw when it's that wide open, and that you can't allow that to be the case. And that's my biggest sticking point with the 3rd 19. Brian.
And Keith Wiegand just said, Vince, and I understand where he's coming from, but he's just incorrect in this particular situation that, hey, J.D. Bertrand's got to get up underneath the Mecca. That's not his job, because they ran 3 verts to his side.
He rerouted number 3. He reroutes number 3 on that one.
Right. So I'm going to show you what it would have looked like if J.D. Bertrand would have gone to under Mecca. So that's J.D. right here. This is J.D. right here.
Yep.
Right. If he goes here, it's a touchdown.
Then this guy's wide open in the middle.
It's a touchdown.
Yeah.
Now you can say, okay, you give a touchdown, but at least now you have 15 seconds left instead of 1. Well, you're still losing the game, guys.
Right.
So the whole play, the whole call, it's like you've got 3 guys, you got these 2 guys and these 2 guys, but why are your safeties playing so soft? Mm-hmm. That's the thing that comes down to, Vince, for me. It's just, I don't understand why the safeties are playing so soft.
Right.
And it was just one of those things where there just was no need for it. And if you actually look on the other side, I'm trying to see who that other safety was on the other side of the field. It looked like it might have been Thomas Harper on the other side, or no, actually. So DJ Brown wasn't. Hold on a second. I said it was DJ Brown on the 3rd 19, and I don't think that's who it was. I think it was Ramon Henderson, which makes me like the call even less. Because, it was Ramon Henderson, not DJ Brown. So apologies to DJ Brown. DJ was on the other side. DJ actually played the backside seam well. He sat at the goal line and was ready to jump the seam as soon as it cleared the second level defender. So actually, Vince, are you seeing that? So on the backside, if you look at DJ's body language, DJ's sitting on the goal line, and as soon as that seam clears, DJ starts to squeeze on it. Do you see that backside?
Yep.
So who is that? Cade Stover, or who's that? Is that number 0? That's number 3. Can't tell who that guy is up the seam. But the backside number 2 gets vertical, Vince, and DJ, as soon as he clears Marist, DJ goes to play it. Yeah. Ramon up top does the exact opposite. He just sits and lets the ball get caught in front of him. Because the other thing, too, is if Ramon plays that play with a little bit more aggressiveness, I mean, that's one of those things, Vince, where, that's a step in front of it situation. Like, to me, he starts working backwards. They can't beat you over the top on this play. It's impossible for them to – you should jump that throw and pick it off.
Yes.
So there just was so much wrong. It was poorly called and it was poorly executed. And I apologize to DJ Brown on this particular play. I looked at the wrong number. DJ was backside. DJ actually played the route correctly backside.
Correct. He was coming right down to take it away.
As soon as that backside seam squeezes on Marist, he's on it.
Yep, because he's coming downhill, and then he sees the throw in the air, and then he starts to head over.
That's when he goes
play.
Over. Yep, yeah. Exactly. And I don't think J.D. Bertrand played that seam by number 3 very well either. He collisioned the guy. He's got to open up and run with that guy, in my opinion. But they just left this big window, this big soft spot between the linebackers and the safeties, and it just for no reason whatsoever. So it was a losing play.
Yes.
And again, the Ohio State kid had to throw it, and the other Ohio State kid had to catch it.
Absolutely.
And props to them.
Yep.
But
you made it easy.
You made it easy for them.
Right.
And these are too good of players to make it easy for them. And that's why we had that key, Vince, in the game was do not let why did Marvin Harrison not have a big game? Because they made it hard on him. He made that great catch on the sideline against Benjamin Morrison, and Morrison just played it beautifully because he couldn't catch it and stay in bounds.
Right.
Because of the way Benjamin played him. So every yard Marvin Harrison got, he had to earn for the most part.
All 32 of them.
Right. Except for like the one slant that he beat Camp for 10 yards. Like the linebackers got it. And that was just an issue all game. Notre Dame's linebackers stunk at getting up underneath coverages.
Right.
Just absolutely stunk. And this was the worst coached linebacker. I mean, the linebackers have been good all year, I thought. They were not good in this game, especially in the pass game for the most part. So it just was really frustrating, Vince, because there were just so many opportunities to go make those plays. And when you made it hard on Ohio State, they made some plays and didn't make some plays. Made some tough throws and catches, but then also had a lot of incompletions. Because, I mean, Kyle McCord threw for, 240 yards in the game, Vince? But he did it on 37 attempts.
Right. Yep.
Right. Like that's what we said is like, look, they're going to get their yards, but make them do it on a lot of targets.
Right.
And that's the key, right? That's the key in this game is you got to make them work for it. And for the most part, I thought they did.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. He threw the ball 37 times. He had 240 yards. He had no touchdowns, 57% completion. I mean,
the two best receivers in college football, the best receiving core in college football is Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka, and they had 128 yards in the game.
Right. On
10 catches, but it was on 21 attempts.
Right.
So Ohio State was sub 50% on throwing to those. This is exactly what we talked about. Like they may get their yards, but you got to make them work for it.
Right.
And on outside throws, they were 4 of 9 for 36 yards against Cam and Benjamin. And kudos to Ohio State because what Ohio State did, and Vince, we said it before the game. I said they're going to put Marvin and Emeka in the slot at times and go at those guys. And what is Notre Dame going to do? And what Notre Dame did is, we're just going to keep going single coverage on him and put Clarence Lewis on Emeka and put DJ Thomas Harper on him. And it's like, well, that's an unfair, Thomas bench him. And I'm like, who's on your team is you're going to put in the slot and match up against Emeka? Who? There's no one-on-one. Nobody. You don't have anyone on your roster that can do that. Nobody else in college football has anyone on the roster that can do that. You got to help those guys. Your linebackers got to get up underneath those crossing routes, right? And they didn't do those things, Vince. And so that's what I say is, in a lot of ways, when it mattered, Ohio State made the adjustments and made the plays, and the Notre Dame defense did. And I'm not trying to put this all on the defense, because they held Ohio State to 17 points. You know, they held Ohio State to, was it 366 yards? And we said before the game, I guarantee if Notre Dame's defense does what they did last year, Notre Dame will win this football game. And not only did they, and I was wrong, they didn't do what they did last year. They held Ohio State to less.
They played better.
Less yards than they did last year. Yes, less yards per play than they did last year. So the offense has got to step up and do better. You've got to score more than 14 points in this football game. This is not blaming this all on the defense, right? We spent an hour on the offense, but it does come down to what we said about the defense last year. Even when they'd play well for 3.5 quarters, when they needed money stops last year in the big games, they couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. And this is another example of that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it was my biggest criticism. One of my biggest criticisms of the defense last year was those late drives in games. There were multiple times in games that Notre Dame lost last year. Just got to stop them on this last drive. And they didn't. And that's the only thing I could think of after the game on Saturday was, it's got to stop them on this last drive, man. Just got to stop them on this. And they didn't.
Yeah. And look, they did on the drive before. I mean, shut down the jet sweep on 4th down. But again,
great play.
You did a great job defensively, putting yourselves in position to where you had a 14-10 lead, but you had a chance to put the game away. And yes, the offense needs to go down there and get points and take more time. I get all that.
Yes, 100%.
But this is a team game. Game.
Yep.
And the fact is you had the ball at the end. You'd held Ohio State to 301 yards. They had to go. You just needed to not let them go past 64 yards. That's it. Just hold them to 64 yards or less. That's it. You can do it.
Yep.
And that's the frustrating thing is, look, this was a team loss. Offense played a role. Defense played a role. And at the end of the day, Vince, if they would have made the one field goal attempt, that Ohio State touchdown ties the game up, and they go into overtime. And the way that Notre Dame was playing in that game, they had the momentum, even with that scoring drive that would have tied it up. Notre Dame was still playing good football. And because they were leaning on Ohio State's defensive line, I like Notre Dame going into the second half or in this overtime with their ability to run the football against Ohio State. You know, and it gives you a much better chance than needing to go 75 yards in 1 second.
In 1 second, yeah.
You know, so all three phases of the game played into this. And let's wrap it up with this, Vince. Even on that 3rd and 19 play, they still had a yard to get. And this was the biggest failure of the game. And I appreciate and respect Marcus Freeman for being the good leader he is and trying to explain it away without throwing somebody under the bus. But what he said was this, Vince, and this is the worst part. He said, when we realized we only had 10 guys on the field, it was too late to run a guy on. And what he's admitting there is they didn't realize it until they were lining up for the second play.
Yeah.
In which they had 10 men on the field. Because here's the deal. Ohio State didn't realize they had 10 men on the field the first play either.
Nope.
Which is why they threw the ball the way that they did.
They did on play 2.
Correct. And somebody asked me this, and it was a very good question. Somebody on, I think I can't remember, it was on the message board or on direct message said, hey, well, Ohio State didn't realize it, and they didn't line up and just quickly run the play again. If they knew Notre Dame had 10 guys in the field, why didn't they just quickly line up and run that second play? Why did they take their time? Because here's something that's being left out. From the second that ball fell incomplete, I actually did this. I got a stopwatch out, and I hit the stopwatch the minute the ball hit the ground. 36 seconds went by before Ohio State snapped the ball on the next play. 36 seconds. If you knew when the first play was ran, you only had 10 guys. The second that ball hits the ground, that 11th guy is sprinting on the field. He gets lined up, no problem. There's no threat of a penalty. There's no issue whatsoever.
5 seconds, you're on the field.
Because Ohio State didn't realize it. Now, here's what happened. So Ohio State realizes it after the play. They only got 10 guys. So, well, why didn't they line up and run it quickly? Because Notre Dame could have ran a guy on the field because it was an incomplete pass. Now, if they would have ran a run play, Notre Dame might not have been able to get a guy on the field. But because they threw a pass but to the outside, there's plenty of time to get a guy over there. And so what that tells me is they didn't realize it until Ohio State had lined up for the second play. That's incredibly inexcusable. Because you actually caught a break that they threw the pass play that they did.
Correct.
On 1st and 10.
A
or
quick
first
hitter where the defensive line has nothing to do with. They had nothing to do with that play.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so then you go run it again, and now Patelho's still not on the field again. That's a coaching failure and a player failure.
Both.
And the fact that nobody in there's no defensive player saying, hey, we only got 10. Nobody at Notre Dame realized that they only had 10. That's such a failure in that moment. And I hate to be this critical, but it's an absolute failure.
It's inexcusable.
And you got a reprise by the fact they threw an outside pass. The ball hit the ground. Vince, 36 seconds went by before that second ball was snapped. And they still barely scored. Imagine if you had Jordan Patel, who's been a pretty good run defender this year,
right,
on that play.
And they only scored by about this much.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. They still barely scored with 10 guys on the field. Still barely scored.
I still say they scored because there's some crap online they didn't get. I think
here's
scored,
what it is.
But
here's what it is, Vince. To me, there's shadows and all this. It goes back to the 4th down call. It'd be very easy for me to jump into hey, he didn't actually get in. Well, maybe he didn't. But whatever was called on the field, you did not have irrefutable evidence to overturn it. And if you got to screenshot something and measure, then it's not clear to me. It's not clear to me. What's clear to me is when they ruled Ohio State called a touchdown pass. You look at the replay and the ball clearly hits the ground. I need 5 seconds to realize that's an incomplete pass.
Exactly.
Right. So okay, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. They made the call. There's not clear irrefutable evidence to overturn it. But here's the deal: if you have 10 guys on the field, maybe you make that stop. So again, Vince, there's no excuse, there's
Zero.
no justification for not having a 10th, 11th guy. So 2 failures. One, coming out of a timeout, you didn't have enough guys on the field. That's on you. Here's the other part. Your team lined up on that last play, Vince, with a chance to you're coming out of a timeout. Notre Dame didn't just run onto the field and have to quickly get lined up out of the timeout. I mean, you still didn't have you
had a second chance after that.
Yeah.
Because people in the chat are absolutely correct. The refs held up play because Ohio State subbed on that last play. They subbed.
So there's just no excuse. Ohio State had no urgency on that play, Vince.
Yes.
No urgency.
No.
None.
I would.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. They were spotting the ball. They were going like this. Notre Dame had 30 seconds of real time to get a guy on the field, which again tells me they didn't realize that they didn't have a guy until Ohio State lined up. And then they realized it.
Yep.
That's an absolute failure. Now, I don't want Marcus Freeman coming out in a press conference saying this guy effed up or that guy effed up. He needs to say what he said. I'm good with that. But behind the scenes, there needs to be some severe consequences for this.
Yep.
Because you have a very simple job. You need to be on the field. You're a senior on this football team. You're a starter. You know this package. You're on the field. We said this on Saturday night. Every position coach coming out in that moment is counting their dudes. Mike Mickens had all his dudes on the field, right? Max Bulla had all his dudes on the field. Yep. Coach Washington needed to make sure he had all his dudes on the field. What's Nick Sebastian doing? What's Al Golden doing? Right? The fact that nobody in the defensive operation from a player or coaching standpoint realized they were missing a dude until the second play. And again, remember the pass was knocked out of bounds, Vince.
Right. Yes.
That was not a quick play. They came out of a timeout, lined up with not enough people, had plenty of time to get a second guy on the second play to get somebody in. They still failed. That's just where it's at.
I did this earlier in my chain of failure is like player, GA, position coach, defensive coordinator, head coach. Like that's the chain. And there's equal parts to go around. There's equal parts of blame to go around. Don't get me wrong. But every one of those people in the operation, there's blame there. There's blame, right? So it's, and the other thing that's just amazing to me is that the entire defense is in that huddle. The entire defense, not just the 11 guys, the entire defense is in that timeout huddle. And they broke it and didn't have 11. Like, the package was called. You got to know when to be on the field.
Dude, you coached high school for how long?
15 years.
High school football in Northern Indiana.
Yep.
Every time you came out of a timeout, you're telling me you weren't sitting there watching, counting who you had enough guys in the field.
I did it from the box all the time. All the time. Right. And I would hammer a middle school coach for not having enough guys on the field, Brian. I would.
Hey,
I would
Jay
hammer
Henry
a middle school coach.
Vince, Jay Henry in the chat just made a great point. I'd rather have, this is what Jay said, I'd rather have 12 and get the penalty than to be undermanned. I
would have thrown whatever player was closest to me, I'd have thrown him out on the field so that we got a penalty because they're on the 1 yard line. Yeah. It's a 1.5 foot penalty. Just throw them out there. Take the penalty, man. Take it.
Yeah. So it's just, I mean, Vince, this is your job. This is what you get paid 6 and 7 figures to do.
Absolutely.
The very simplest thing of what you do as a coach is to make sure your dudes make sure you know who's on the field. I mean, that's the very basic football 101 type of deal.
Yep. Gotta have 11.
And in the biggest moment of the game, you didn't have enough of your kids on the field. And look, now again, you can say, oh, it's all on the coaches and the million, stop blaming the kids. I'm blaming the millionaires. First of all, there's only one millionaire on the staff that I know of, and that's the head football coach, right? And he needs to he's accountable for this. He's the head coach.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, this is ultimately on him, and he needs to fix whatever happened. But the fact of the matter, it doesn't matter if these were Division III coaches making $30,000 a year. It's still your job,
right,
to make sure. But at the same time, we also are talking about athletes at the University of Notre Dame, and I'll be honest with you, there are more millionaires on the roster because of NIL than on the coaching staff.
That's a really good point.
I promise you that Sam Hartman's made more NIL money this year than Jared Parker's made in his salary at the University of Notre Dame. So let's that whole blame the millionaires thing doesn't hold water for me anymore. Okay, right. We're grown-ups. These players are scholarship players at the University of Notre Dame. They need to know that I'm supposed to be on the field, right? Yep. So they're not absolved of this at all. The other 10 guys were on the field, right? But at the end of the day, Vince, you know me. This is how I've always been. At the end of the day, if your player wasn't on the field, he's responsible for that, but you are responsible for him.
Correct.
And you need to make sure he gets on the field. We see coaches do it all the time. You run out, you're supposed to be in 12 personnel, second tight end, turn around, get on the field.
Exactly.
Right? And so the point is, yes, the players need to be held accountable as well. I know that in this era of 2023, anyone under the age of 35 shouldn't be held accountable for their actions. I realize that's the world we live in. That's not the world Irish Breakdown is going to have on this show.
Right. I would blame a high school kid for not being out there.
Yes.
Now, I'm not putting 100% of the blame on the kid.
I'm putting 5.
But there's blame to go around.
Yes. 5 to 10% is going on the player.
That's why I said there's a hierarchy of blame here. And the players
you know what
at the
Brian
bottom,
Kelly would have done if this would have happened?
Oh, he would have blamed the kid in a heartbeat.
No. In all seriousness, maybe in the media, but in this is one thing I'll give Brian Kelly credit for. When your players screwed up on practice, remember what Brian Kelly would do as a coach? He wouldn't yell at the kids. He'd yell at their coach. Quinn, get your F&O line going. Like freaking, what are your receivers doing over here? We used to praise him for that. That's one of the things he did that I liked. You know what I mean? So it's like, dude, why you can't get your 4 guys on the field, or you can't get your whatever on the field? And Coach Freeman needs to be able to do the same thing. Now, I believe he has. I believe Marcus Freeman is doing publicly what Brian Kelly should have done more of, that we praised Brian Kelly for in the heat of the game, going off on his coaches for the player mistakes.
Sure.
I give him credit for that. Okay. What I didn't like is in press conferences, he would deflect all the blame on someone else. Marcus Freeman's kind of taking this on himself, saying, hey, we didn't realize it. It's our fault. He's not saying it's okay. He's explaining how they screwed up. He's not blaming. You never heard it was supposed to be Jordan Patelho. It was supposed to be this guy. You never heard that. Oh, Al Washington screwed up. He didn't get his guy. No, here's what happened. We didn't realize this. We were going to fix it. That's fine. I don't need you to go throw a coach under the bus in a press conference. I just need to know that you're going to freaking fix it behind the scenes.
Yep.
Because to me, somebody says, is this a fireable offense? No, it's not a fireable offense. I'm not firing a coach in the middle of the year, no matter what game they cost us. But this will absolutely be in part of your year-end review when we decide what the staff is going to look like next year.
Yep.
Because this is inexcusable. Vince, it's an inexcusable mistake from a top-down standpoint. That's what it boils down to. It just is. And we can do the blame game all around, but the fact of the matter is this is just not something that's ever supposed to happen in this kind of situation. No. And they got away with it at first. They caught a break. They got away with it at first. And the fact that they still didn't see it makes it even worse. Like if Ohio State would have scored on that first play, I'd have been like, dude, that's terrible. That's terrible. Terrible. But I understand it. You know, you came out of timeout, Ohio State lined up. You didn't have time to get somebody on. It is what it is. You screwed up bad. But it just was compounded so badly by the fact that they had 36 seconds to get to figure it out, and they still didn't see it until, second 33.
Almost explain it away if it was just the one play. But it's still coming out of a timeout.
No, I mean, we're ripping them for
it. Right. 100%.
It'd be one thing if, like, they spiked the ball, you made a quick personnel change, and somebody didn't run on. That's bad, but that happens actually quite a lot. And usually you have time to go get somebody on there. But like and this is the point he's making, is like, look, if it was right here at the 25-yard line, we could have quickly just got someone on sides. But, but my whole thing is, dude, if they snap the ball and you're off sides and they score anyway, they're going to decline the penalty. Like, this is what didn't make sense about what Coach Freeman said. And again, I wonder if he's just, again, playing cover. We didn't have enough time to get somebody on the field. Well, okay, but you're trying to stop them with 10. Like, if you stop them with 10, great. You screwed up, offsides gets declined, and they take the offsides and they go again. But I'm going to take the chance of, like he even said, next time we're just going to commit a penalty. Well, then why not commit the penalty now?
Commit the penalty
to get the guy on the field.
Right. Exactly.
Commit it. So yeah, it just there's no good explanation for this other than just from a top-down standpoint, it was a colossal failure in that instance.
Screwed up.
It's a colossal failure.
Yep.
It just,
And at the end of the day, should not have come down to those last plays.
No, and that's why we spent so much time on the third 19.
Correct.
Because if you make the right call and you execute the play correctly on the third 19, it doesn't come to that. And here's the thing that I want to see is, like, at some point in time, we're talking about certain guys making the same mistakes that we've been talking about them making for a long time. Like DJ Brown played great against NC State, but against Ohio State, he just looked a lot more like the guy that he'd kind of always been.
Sure.
Ramon Henderson gets his chance at the end of the game to go make a play, and he's tentative. Well, what's the big knock on Ramon Henderson, Ben Vince's entire career? It's too tentative.
In the pass game.
He's too tentative. Yeah, I mean, he can play over the top, but it's just one of those things where, I just I just have a hard time. I have a hard time justifying the fact that Ramon Henderson played twice as many snaps as Jack Kaiser.
Yeah. Yep.
Just have a hard time. I have a hard time defending that.
Yep.
So yeah. Yep.
Let's turn it.
At the end of the day, the results the same, Vince.
So we're going to do
the results the same.
You're got absolutely
a few
right.
To get to, and then we'll get out of here. Okay.
Oh, okay. Joe's had a rough 48 hours. All right, Joe.
I'm with you, man.
Biggest question I have: did either Parker or Golden become predictable at any time?
I don't think Parker did. Look, sometimes a good coordinator is just going to make the right call. There was some predictability early in the third down packages. Like they were running the corners and the snags and the stuff like that they run a lot of that type smash and snag. They like to run a lot of that in third down and third mediums and things like that, Vince. And I thought they were a little predictable in that regard early, and that led to some of the third down lack of success early in the game. And if you look at like Notre Dame's third down results, they went 2 of 3 in the first half or first quarter, and then went 0 of 2 in the second quarter when some drives stalled out. And then in the third quarter, they went 2 of 3. And then in the fourth quarter, they went 1 of 2. So they were better on third down in the second half than they were the first half.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was better, because I think they actually converted their first 2 third downs of the game, Vince. Yes, they converted a 3rd and 3 and a 3rd and 3. And so then the rest of the half, they went 0 of 3. They didn't convert any other third downs the rest of the half after that first drive. And then the second half, they were better. So, I mean, so early on, I thought they had a good plan, and Hartman made some nice balls, and they got some guys open. But I wouldn't call it predictable. It's just like on a couple of those third downs, Ohio State made good calls. Notre Dame ran something that maybe was a little bit more predictable. I thought Notre Dame wasn't predictable on defense. It's just the stuff they called in bad situations were just executed poorly or were bad calls. So like drop an 8 on the first 3rd and 6. I don't love the call, but you can't give up an easy Y middle route, Vince, when you're dropping 8. I mean, somebody's supposed to drop right over the middle. What's the point of dropping 8 if nobody's dropping over the middle?
Right.
He just caged over, easiest little 8-yard gain he's ever made in his freaking life against drop 8. That's terrible execution. And when it happens the whole game, what it tells me, Vince, is what? They didn't prepare them to execute that. They didn't prepare them to execute that coverage in this game. Because when they dropped 7 and 8 in this game, they were terrible almost every single time. So what does that mean? Does that mean the players suck? No. It means you did a bad job of making sure they were able to execute those calls. And why? Because it's stuff you hadn't done all year. So again, you went away from what had got you there, what had got you a 4-0 start, holding teams at 11 points a game, less than 200 passing yards a game. You went away from what got you there and worked for most of this game against Ohio State. You went away from it when it was money time. That's not coaching. That's coaching afraid, and that's coaching not trusting your players. Yeah. And if you don't trust your players to make plays, and you better darn sure make sure that they are the most fundamentally sound football team on the planet. You know what I mean? And but I don't think it had anything to do with predictability. It just, I mean, you get what I'm saying? Like sometimes, Vince, the other team just, and Jim Knowles is a pretty good coach too. He's going to have Jared Parker's number on some plays. And you know what? Jared Parker had his number on some plays. Sure. They just didn't make enough of those, and they didn't execute enough of those to win the game. I mean, Notre Dame moved the ball up and down the field on Ohio State in this game. Vince, they punted twice the whole game.
The whole game.
They had, 3 turnovers on downs? I mean, a missed field goal.
They only had 7 possessions.
Yeah, and they had a missed field goal,
2 touchdowns,
2 turnovers on downs, 2 touchdowns. It's like you got to get points out of some of those. And if you just get points on 7. One of those 4, if you just get on one of those 3 drives where you had a turnover on downs and a missed field goal, if you just get points on one of them, worst case, tie ball game, we're going to overtime. Best case, those points are touchdowns, and you still win the game.
Right. Yep.
But, they didn't. They got to do better.
Yep. Isaac Atkins, great game from an OSU fan. Both teams left some points on the field. Would love a rematch in the playoffs. You're all going to murder USC.
I don't know if y'all have watched USC or not this year, but I hope so. But that's going to be a ball game.
I think it'll be a high-scoring ball. So take the over.
It's not going to be 17-14.
Take the over.
I'm pretty sure on that one.
That is what I will say. But thanks, Isaac. I appreciate it, man. From CW Pura, Brian, thanks to you and your 4 horsemen for terrific pre- and post-game coverage. Oh, never heard it put that way.
You are welcome. You are welcome. Very, very much.
From Carson Jackson, do you think Marcus Freeman has his hand in the defense enough when it comes to philosophy and especially play calling? Feels 3rd and 19 doesn't happen with Marcus Freeman as defensive coordinator.
I'd have to go back and refresh myself on some of Marcus Freeman's play calls were, but right. Yeah, I tend to think no, but I can't say that definitively. That would be an emotional reaction more so than an analysis one. I'd like to think that wouldn't happen, but yeah, I can't say for sure that it wouldn't have happened in 2021. Now, what I'll say is that in 2021, when Marcus Freeman was the defensive coordinator, Notre Dame had the 10th best third down defense in college football. They only allowed 59 conversions on 183 attempts for 32.2%. They were tied for 10th. And there was 6 of the teams ahead of them were group of 5 teams. So if you just look at Power 5 teams, there was only Oklahoma State, Wisconsin, NC State, and Bama were the only teams ahead of them. So they were 5th amongst Power 5 teams on third down defense under Marcus Freeman. And last year under Al Golden, his first year, they were 49th. They allowed 61 conversions on 168 attempts. And this year they're 63rd in third downs. And Ohio State converted 10 third downs on Notre Dame in this
10
game.
out of 7, 10 out of 17.
10 out of 17. Yep. 10 out of 17. Marcus Freeman allowed 7 in his first 2 games as coordinator and then 8 against Virginia Tech. And that's the most he gave up that year. And when you look at the end of the year, I mean, it was like 5. It was last 5 games of the year, actually last 7 games of the year, 6 of 12 against USC, 6 of 11 against North Carolina. Then after that was 4 of 15, 5 of 14, 3 of 15, 3 of 11, and then 3 of 14 against Oklahoma State in the bowl game. So, yeah. And here's the crazy thing is Notre Dame finished last year, what did I say, in the 50s? No, what was it last year, Vince? Do you remember what the number was? I think I said in the 50s.
49. Oh, last year, 49.
Yeah,
you said.
49th. And that included a game against UNLV where UNLV went 0 for 12. So, yeah, it was not good.
Right.
And in their losses, they allowed 7 of 13 against Ohio State, 4 of 13 against Marshall, 7 of 16 against Stanford, which is not good, and then 8 of 12 against USC. So in their last 2 losses, they've allowed 18 third down conversions. That's not okay. It's not okay.
Connor Grant, Ohio State fans saying they played horribly. What you say, or would you say that is the case?
That's because Ohio State fans, a lot, not all, because like Isaac Grant just had a comment, hey, it's 2 great teams. A lot of Ohio State fans are still living in this stupid world of Notre Dame sucks. And so
there's a lot of Notre Dame fans that are living there currently as well.
Well, I mean, most aren't. Most Notre Dame fans look at it like this. Most Notre Dame fans are pissed because they knew they were the better team. They not say they were the better team because the better team won. That's otherwise that Notre Dame would have been but they outplayed Ohio State a lot of that game. Right. A lot of the mistakes at a lot of the stuff that happened to Ohio State was more of Notre Dame making plays. Sure. And same thing the other way around. That's why we didn't, oh man, Jared Parker sucks. And like some of this was like Ohio State guys made some really good plays in that game.
Yeah.
But not all, because again, there's some in our chat that are doing it. Isaac Atkins, who's an Ohio State fan, just put a chat and they're saying this is 2 really good football teams. There are some that looked at this and realized this was a great football game between 2 really good football teams. But a lot of the irrational, silly Ohio State fans, especially ones who are on social media, they're idiots, to be honest with you, with all due respect. And that's what I found on Twitter, that most of the people that like to talk the most are the dumbest. You ever noticed that? Like the people that just respond to everything you say and do, they're just like, this is one of the dumbest human beings I've seen in my life. But I've also found over the years, Vince, that like with Georgia fans, if you just look at Georgia fans based on what they do on social media, you think Georgia fans are idiots. I've been around Georgia fans twice, and they, by and large, are great. Clemson fans, great. Yeah, a little bit different here. But I think deep down, Ohio State fans know that Notre Dame's a really good football team. They just can't bring themselves to say it on social media. But you see a lot of them in our chat. There were several Ohio State fans. Mike Farino, who's on our chat all the time, Vince, he's an Ohio State fan. He was like, man, great game between 2 great teams.
Yep.
The real ones know. Just like real Notre Dame fans should say, hey, look, Ohio State did what they needed to do, right? This wasn't about, oh, you gave them the game. Well, I mean, yeah, you kind of did, but Ohio State still had to make the plays, and they did. Tip the cap to them. And I would have a lot more respect for them right now if their head coach didn't act like such a jackass after the game. But, it is what it is.
David Hess, what's up, fellas? Is it me, or does this one hurt more than the Bush push game? Onward, Notre Dame.
This one hurts more because that game, that USC was the by far the better team that year. Notre Dame played out of their minds in that game, and it just wasn't good enough against a phenomenal team at USC. This is that game where it's just like, so like, you're like, wow, you could have won that game, should have won that game. But like the 4th and 9, here's a perfect difference, Vince. Oh, USC had to make plays to beat Notre Dame on that last drive. Notre Dame went 4th and 9. They win it, Leinart, and you said, hey, if you're going to beat me, you're going to have to make the perfect down the field throw over the top. And that's exactly what Matt Leinart did. If you'd have made Kyle McCord make that same throw, maybe he doesn't make it. But instead, you're giving him crossers and seams and, stuff where he can put the ball on a receiver, not throw through a defender. And that's my problem with that, Vince, is that they didn't make him earn it enough. Right. Maybe Kyle McCord still would have made the throw. Maybe he would have. I'm not saying he wouldn't
make
have.
Him do it.
Make him beat you with a perfect throw that has to go over or through a defender or two. And they didn't do that. And that's the difference. Where Notre Dame should have won this game. Notre Dame would have been lucky to beat USC. Some things went their way, and some Notre Dame kids played out of their minds in that game. Returned to punt for a touchdown and, some things like that. This game was where you just really felt like, man, Notre Dame should have won this game. Like they were the better team until the last 3 minutes. Like USC 05, Vince, it was a back and forth heavyweight battle. I watched in this game the first 56 minutes, and you're just like, dude, Notre Dame, Ohio State left some points on the board, but Notre Dame left a lot more points on the board. And Ohio State had that touchdown where it's just like the 61-yard touchdown run. That was more of Notre Dame not playing it well than it was, wow, what a great play by Ohio State. Right. But to Ohio State's credit, their defense never let Notre Dame have any of those plays.
Yeah.
That's the difference. So I'm not going to sit here and say Ohio State didn't earn the victory, Vince. It just comes down to, you should have won this one. And so, for me, this one hurts more than the USC game in 05. I don't know if you agree or not.
It's a very similar feeling for me, to be honest with you. It's I get everything that you're saying, but from just a straight fan standpoint, we won that game was won. The game was won, and it just like the carpet just got pulled out from under you on the last play of the game in both situations. And so for me, it was like extreme elation to extreme depression, back to back. Like glass case of emotion and all that. So
I get that.
Yep. Go Irish. What 2 things do you work on this week for Duke? Film and what kind, certain reps, specific plays. What 2 things do you prove on this week? It's a simple answer for me. It's not just 2 things. You go back to work. I mean, you go back to work, finding out your identity and practicing the way you practice and all of those things. It's not 2 specific things that you need to work. It's a great question, Go Irish. I appreciate it. I'm just saying it's not like, guys, we got to do this and this if we want to be that team.
Yeah.
You just go back to work, man.
Yeah, because it's not so much, Vince, hey, we got to fix this particular play or fix that play. It's just we got to execute better. Whatever the game plan, because your game plan is going to be different against Duke. Whatever it is, we got to do better job executing in these moments. We got to be better on 3rd down early. We got to make sure our 4th down plan is better. Our 4th down execution is better. We got to make sure maybe there's some things you need to change. So really what it comes down to is play your game. Because Marcus Freeman has said it, Vince, Notre Dame can't beat Notre Dame. Well, guess what? Notre Dame beat Notre Dame on Saturday. Now, Ohio State helped. So I'm being a bit to the point where it's like, hey, we didn't do what we needed to do. But at the same time, it's like, it's just don't beat yourself. Play a clean game. That's going to be the biggest thing, is executing at a high level is going to be the biggest thing, Vince.
Garth Cassidy, Brian, can we have Junior move back to Mike?
I don't think that makes sense, Vince. I don't think that's the answer right now. Junior's body right now is geared towards him playing Viper.
You agree with that?
Now, would I be okay maybe considering that move in the offseason? Sure. But to me, you just got to get JD to play better. This isn't about benching JD and Marist and all that stuff. It's not a game one of reaction, because they have been playing so much better in previous games. Now, there's some players on the third level that may need to start losing time to some younger players or a transfer. But Junior, if you're going to move Junior to Mike, it's got to happen in the offseason. But I'm still not doing it, Vince. You got Drake Bowen, Nolan Ziegler's going to be back soon, and you got Kingston coming in next year. You got Jaden Alsbury. You're going to have Bodie Kuhn coming in. Get those kids ready to go. You decided to make this move. roll with it, because next year when if Patello's not back, you're going to want Junior as part of that rotation, and his body's now been built up to play that position.
Yes, yeah, he's remade his body to. Yeah, agreed. Carson Jackson says, I was afraid Marcus Freeman would give too much of the D to Al
Golden. I mean, look, Al, you hire a coach to do the job, and then you make sure he does it within your philosophy, what you want, But yeah, he just needs to. And look, Al Golden did not do a bad job. Al Golden did a lot of good things on Saturday.
Yeah,
a lot of good things. It's just in the money situations, he didn't. And that's the difference. It's not like they went out there and gave up 45 points to Ohio State, Vince. They've held in 2 years. In 2 years, they've held Ohio State to an average of 19 points. And they've yet to get to 400 yards of offense. So Al Golden's doing a lot more good things in these games than bad things. It's just his philosophy tends to lead to mistakes because he's still doing too much of what he thinks works schematically and not playing to the strengths of his players enough, in my opinion. But again, guys, the defense gave up 17 points. But I will say this, Vince, 3rd and 19, 4th and 7, those are situations where most head coaches are more involved.
Sure.
And so, Coach Freeman's got to make sure that as the head coach that he makes sure that his coaches in those certain situations, hey, Jared, next time we get in a 4th and 1, you're either getting right up underneath the line and you're root hogging up in there, or we're giving the ball to Audric. I don't want to see that again. You know what I mean? Hey, next time we get in a 3rd and 19, I don't want to see that quarterback get time to throw the football. So don't ever let that, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be on him. Because if this happens again, that's on the head coach. You are allowing the same thing we said about Brian Kelly. When these things continue to happen, that's on you as a coach.
Yep. 100%.
You've got to be responsible for this head coach. And the same thing. Just because I like Coach Freeman more than I like Brian Kelly doesn't mean that the standard changes.
Correct.
Because ultimately the loss is on the head football coach. He's the one that's got a 4-1 record. No one's saying, well, Marcus Freeman's 4-0, but Al Golden and Jared Parker 0-1. No.
Right.
Marcus Freeman's 4-1. And coach is going to have to fix that. And I think he will, because we haven't seen him, Vince, in 2 years make let things fester for too long before he makes changes.
It's one of the things I like about him, to be honest with you. He'll make mistakes, but he always looks at the mistakes and at least attempts to change them in some form or fashion. Always. Yep. And so, I have yet to see something to make me think otherwise. All right, Connor Grant. I know this is looking ahead, but even if we win out, do you see us getting into the college football playoff over a 1-loss conference champion?
It depends on who the conference champion is. But look, guys, if Notre Dame goes 11-1 the rest of the way, they're going to beat a lot of really good football teams. The next 3 teams they're going to play are all undefeated. They're all 4-0.
Yeah, and they're all ranked.
Is Louisville ranked now?
They will be. They're not yet.
If they win this weekend.
They weren't before this ranking. I don't know if they jumped in.
I don't think they're ranked.
I don't think they did.
I'm just going to quickly look, Vince. Yeah, they're not in, but they are 28th in the AP poll.
Okay. And who do they have this week?
31st in the coaches poll. So, and then let me see who they have this week. They're at NC State on Friday.
If they win, they'll be ranked. That's how I feel.
Agree. Yep. And
so
then last one, Vince, before we get out of here.
David Hess.
But worst case, they're going to be 4-1, and you're going to probably USC is going to be undefeated probably when they play. So you're going to play 3 games in a row where at worst you're playing one team with a loss at worst case scenario, and then you still got to beat Clemson. And so yes, if Notre Dame wins out, I still think that. And Vince, I've said it all along: 11-1 Notre Dame make the playoff. What did I say beginning of the year? I went 12-0 through the schedule, but then when I said what's your record prediction, it's still 11-1. I just don't know who it's going to be to.
Right.
So.
And look, Notre Dame needs help. They're going to need some things to happen around them. There's no doubt about it.
And the way this season is gone,
yes,
guys, Florida State almost lost to Boston College 2 weeks ago.
Thank you.
Okay,
thank you. And they're the number 2 team in the country.
Some stuff is going to happen,
or whatever.
Right?
Yeah. I mean,
Alabama almost lost to South Florida. Some stuff is going to happen, guys.
Right. Notre Dame's 11th right now. If they go 11-1
in a poll that doesn't matter.
Right. If they go 11-1, they got a great shot of making the playoff, but they need help. They need help, which I do think that they'll get, but they need help. So that's where we're at.
Last one. I just
David
was taking
S.
it down because we weren't talking about that one yet.
10-4. Forgive me if you spoke on this already, but how do the missed tackles get cleaned up?
Just the biggest thing: take better angles of the football, be cleaner at the attack. There's like Maris missed a tackle; he's just too out of control. Benjamin on one of the missed tackles, he just got face planted by Cade Stover. It's actually that's guy's 260 and Benjamin's 190. That was a pretty good play by Cade Stover. It's just about taking better angles of the football and going lower. I think Notre Dame still tries to tackle too high. That's when a lot of those mistakes happen, Vince. They're either taking a bad angle or they go too high and get run over. Or bounce off, or go for the big hit. It's just being more fundamentally sound and taking better angles of the football. And they didn't tackle poorly in this game. They had 8 missed tackles in this game. That's 2 men. That's a pretty average, normal college football game.
The missed tackles, it didn't stand out to me like, oh my gosh, they missed a ton of tackles.
Ohio State had 14.
Yeah.
According to Pro Football Focus, so it's the same person doing both. Ohio State had 14 missed tackles in the game.
Right.
Notre Dame had 8. Ohio State had 19 pressures in the game. Notre Dame had 29. Notre Dame had 7 hits on the quarterback. Ohio State had 2. Ohio State had 23 run stops. Notre Dame had 24. So, again, the defense did not play poorly. I don't think missed tackles were the reason they lost. Those are going to happen against good teams. They just are.
Right.
The funny thing is Notre Dame had fewer missed tackles in this game, 8. I believe than they've had all season, Vince. They had 7 against Central Michigan last week. But that's a much improved number over what we've seen in the past.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That's a pretty normal one. I think what's hurt them is sometimes those missed tackles. That's come in key moments.
Like on a 61-yard touchdown run.
Right. It proves costly, but the pure number is not bad. But what happened on that play? Not bad football awareness and a poor angle coming to the football. That's what happened. So JD doesn't show good football awareness, and Xavier, and partly because Xavier's mistake was made worse because of JD. Because JD allowed Travion Henderson to stay on a clear downhill path against Xavier. If JD plays that better and Travion has to bounce it at all, then that's a lot easier angle for Xavier to make that play. So it was like it's the both of them, but JD committed the first sin, which made it harder for Xavier to execute his job. And that's what it comes down to. So do your job, be fundamentally sound, be physical, take better angles of the football. That's what it comes down to, man. So,
no doubt about it. Well, that's going to do it, guys. And thanks for hanging out. This is one of our longer upon further reviews and probably necessary.
Yeah,
to be honest
a lot
with
of stuff
you.
to get out, man.
We hope that we saved you guys some money and you didn't have to go to therapy over the last 48 hours. And
hopefully, or this is your therapy.
That's what I'm saying. Like, this is your therapy. And if you're watching on YouTube, it's free. So hopefully we've helped you out because, to be honest with you, it's helped me. I enjoy kind of talking this out and getting it out of there. But we're going to officially turn the page now. It's Duke. And for me, personally, I think that we're going to learn a lot about Marcus Freeman. We're going to learn a lot about who this team is, this program, where they're headed by the way they play Saturday night. So don't give up on this team just yet, everybody. There's a lot of football left to be played. There's a lot of football left to be played. All right. So here we go, guys. Thank you very, 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 very much.
I like that, Vince.
See, now we're talking.
Yeah, I like that.
See, I was always Coach D before I met you. But you kind of superseded me on this one. So I've let it go.
Yeah.
I've let it go. So appreciate that, Michael. But anyway, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so that you know, because tonight was not a planned situation, folks.
Yep.
You need to have that notification bell.
Turning the page tomorrow, Vince.
Yes, we are.
On to Duke tomorrow.
On to the Dukies. All right. And it's not a basketball game. So this is a big one. So, hey, stay tuned, guys. Got the afternoon show tomorrow. We got Ivy Nation Sports Talk every night as well. So stay locked in. Head over to irishbreakdown.com. Hit the boards at irishbreakdown.com. You may even see some sane takes now that we're about 48 hours after the game is over. All right. So go check it out. It's a fun party over there. And it is a family at the end of the day. So, for Brian, I'm Vince. Thanks for joining us on another edition of Upon Further Review and the Irish Breakdown Podcast.